So good morning, everyone. You notice that I'm on a mic today. Normally, I just kind of yell out to everybody. This is something we have not done before. And if you've been here in 479 for at least, past 5 years, you know that we usually do a lot of different types of sound classes. But we've not done a panel with boom ops. And if you're not familiar with the people that are up here, you have some big names. You have some people that are very experienced as boom ops. They're probably not going to want to brag about their experience because then it reminds us all of how old we are, just being honest. But there's a lot of experience on this stage up here. There is a microphone, as you can see, set up in the middle. If you have a question, feel free to just step up there and start talking into it. And we will certainly accept your questions. You have a panel full of experience that you can ask questions of any of them or all of them or whatever as you see fit. We're going to start off by, I'll ask everybody up here. Sorry, I was trying to eat something here and I decided to choke on it instead. So let's start here real quick with introductions of everybody and just talk a little bit about, just introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your experience, and just whatever you'd really like to tell us. And we'll start on the end with Kevin.
Hey, I'm Kevin Shirkey. I've been in the industry for about 30 years now. About 20 of the years as a solid boom operator. I was a utility previous to that. Let's see. I primarily work with the mixer Peter Devlin. What else?
Where are you from?
Yeah, I live in Miami, Florida. So, but never worked there. Everywhere else. Thanks to Georgia. So, anyways, I have a wife, 2 kids, so it's hard when you travel.
Most of the projects that you worked on recently?
The last movie was Transformers 5 that came out. I've done like up here in The Insurgent, Divergent, Allegiant, The Nice Guys. So I did Transformers 1, 3, 4, 5. Primarily a lot of movies with Michael Bay. Done 9 of his films.
Next, we have Freddie Chancellor. Anybody here in Atlanta who is familiar with Atlanta should know Freddie. Freddie?
Hey, I started when I was a kid doing audio. I've never really done anything else. I'm like a racehorse with blinders. Anything you want to ask me about audio, whether it's film, music, touring, RF, that's just what I do. So versed in a lot. This is one piece of the puzzle for me. I do this mostly at this point for the health insurance. If anybody has any questions about that, you can definitely ask me because I've abused it to the hilt, going through 2 kidney transplants and such. So one of the meds I take is about $8,000 every 3 months, and I wouldn't make it without this union. So that's one of the reasons why I'm here.
And you want to talk about wireless? That's a man to speak about wireless too. He's very, very knowledgeable about wireless. Next, Chris Isaac.
Hey, I'm Chris Isaac.
Awesome, thanks. And go ahead, Chris.
I've been doing sound since, I was 14 in 9th grade and had many different experiences. Tech director for mega churches, recording studios, weekend festivals. Been in the film industry full-time for 6 years now.
Great. Next, we have Robert Maxfield.
Robert Maxfield. I go by Max. St. Joseph, Missouri. Graduate of Mizzou. Go Tigers. Economics degree. Yeah, baby. I was going to go into banking and learn how to really make a living. Lots of money and investments and real estate. Then I got into television and started producing and directing TV commercials and things like that, and won awards. I thought, this is awesome. I want to go off to Hollywood and become a writer and a director. And the first person I met on the New Adventures of Pippi Longstockings in 1986 was a sound mixer. And he took me out to LA and taught me how to boom. And, I told him I was just going to do that for 2 years. And I had a career I was working on. And now here I am sitting in front of you guys. So great to be here.
Next, we have Kurt Peterson, another boom op.
Howdy. Number one rule, don't be late in this business. I started doing sound transfers at Don Sufel and Jeff Wexler's North Star Media in L.A. Mo Chamberlain wrote me in, if you know him, or Crew, his brother. They've been in the business for a long time. But that's where I started. I ran boards for shows and things like that, music shows, and that's how I got started. Did sound transfer, moved into production after I heard what a great, glamorous job it was. And I started working with Bill Reinhardt and Michael Moore out in L.A. And I think that Michael Moore may have passed on by now. But what else are we supposed to say?
No, that's it.
Okay, grew up in Linwood, California, and went to Cal State Fullerton. And I have a journalism degree, of course. So.
Okay, next we have Dave Roberts.
Dave Roberts, Asheville, North Carolina, Texan living abroad. I started out in the 7th grade as a curtain puller in our auditorium class, and it led to this. Just trooped rock and roll shows around for a while, got tired of sleeping on a bus, got married. Now I sleep in different hotels all over the country for 3 or 4 months at a time. But I can't think of a better part-time job to make a career out of. So, and the insurance is great.
And Todd Russell.
Hello, Todd Russell here from Los Angeles, California. Came out here around 5 years ago, been in the business for approaching 25 years now. I worked on, my first movie was a thing called Cabin Boy, the greatest movie ever made. And not only that, my career has gone downhill ever since. So, here I am. Cheers.
And Mike Schmidt.
Hi, I'm Mike Schmidt. I'm originally from New York. Been in the business 27 years. Was electrical engineer on the space shuttle program for like 13 years, and I decided that was too boring, so I jumped into film where it was an easy transfer. Where, I used to have 40-hour work weeks and be home and actually do things, but now you have no life, but I enjoy the film business, and started out in Local 52 in New York, and then decided to move to Florida with Miami, where Miami Vice is being filmed. And when I got there was no work, and I had to go back to New York, so I was traveling back and forth. Then I got the pleasure of meeting Kevin in Florida, and we linked up with Peter Devlin. We did a lot of movies in California and Florida, and but Florida went away, so now I moved here 3 years ago, and I've been mixing since then. But it's kind of the best job I ever had, and I would never do anything else. But I enjoy it, and the people that you meet, that's the most important thing.
So sometimes as you're speaking to a boom op or you're thinking about questions, one thing you might think of also is some of the movies that they've worked on or TV shows. That may help trigger something that you might want to ask. So why don't we start at this end and just name a couple of the projects that you worked on that might have been a challenge or that you might want to mention just as a thinking point for some of the questions that they might think of.
I'll start. Well, I mentioned Michael Bay movies. They're just crazy, and they're very challenging. Typically, he'll show up to work about an hour and a half after call, and you have to be ready for him because once he comes in, he never leaves the set. I mean, you are just on. If you miss something, that's your fault because you weren't near him to hear what's going on with the next setup is. He's always thinking 3 shots ahead. So, but challenging would be any of his movies are always challenging. The show I'm on right now is a nice little movie, single camera shoot, can boom everything. So, not quite used to that. Our DP is our operator. Our gaffer was a boom operator back in the 70s, so he knows the challenges, and I never have to ask for anything on this show. It's super simple. It's called Trial by Fire.
Okay, Freddie?
Let me think. To me, the difference between the different movies would just be the formatting of the cameras and, of course, the DP and lighting, but not as much the shows to me in my memory as more as it is just a challenge of how it's being formulated. So the different formulas, you have to approach them differently, but to me, I don't know if people disagree, but to me, it's all very much a same base level. None of it's really that challenging, but it's just different as far as how you actually have to approach it.
I think he's right. I think going into every movie, it's more about those stigmas of sound versus camera versus, grip and electric, and I feel like when you start a film, your personality will help break that stigma, and it's about developing relationships with the camera department, the operators, the gaffer, the DP, and from my experience, if you're nice to them, they'll be nice to you. With the exception of this one movie I did, it was a Melissa McCarthy film, Life of the Party, and my first day on set, I go up to the DP, I introduce myself, I shake his hand, and the first words out of his mouth are, "Thanks for saying hi, hope you brought your Vaseline," and then he walked away, and I didn't speak another word to him the whole show, and it was wide and tights, every single thing. The director, I'd go up to him and ask him for something, and he was very nice. It was Melissa's husband. He would say, "Thanks for letting me know. I'll see you in ADR." Every single time. So you get those every so often, but I think personality and relationships are important.
Max?
I like to tell, excuse me, I like to tell old stories, and just something that popped up for me was a specific incident that was quite difficult, and I haven't had to do it since. And I had the pleasure of working on a movie about 25 years ago with John Pritchett, who's sitting over there. Steven Seagal movie called Marked for Death. And we were shooting at the Mayan Theater in Los Angeles. And Steven Seagal is not known to be very cooperative either. And while I'm thinking about it, I remember one night walking up to him as he stepped into a car, and I wanted to point out that I had a plant mic in the car so he wouldn't hit it. And he goes, "What the fuck do you want?" That was kind of typical of him. But this particular story took place at the Mayan Theater, and it was a sword fight. And we were in the lobby of this theater, and there was a big chandelier right above where they were shooting, and they had these long sabers like that they would swing around to it in a choreographed manner, stop, say a line, go at it again, stop, say again a line, and move on. And of course, there's always ad-libbing in movies. And so I couldn't go up because of the chandelier, so it was a constant process of going around like this, trying to dodge the sword and then dive in and get the shot. And I don't know if you ever knew that, but it was a very challenging scene.
I did the sound transfers, right? Screwface was what it was called, right?
Yeah,
Before
that
Mark.
was it. They turned, yeah.
I did, yeah, and you could tell Steven Seagal was a complete asshole. Just listening to that stuff that was being boomed. The best experiences I had were working with Chris Nolan because he just always knows what he wants, and everything was laid out. It was just easy to get his plan, and he was very methodical. He was economical. I've had many challenges, and certainly developing the right relationship with the gaffer, with the key grip. Key grip can be your best friend or your worst enemy on a show, but that's the thing. You've got to kind of, it's an army of three against everybody else. Now, I did a couple Steven Seagal movies as well, back to back. Oh my God, what a nightmare. Because by then he was super vain. He had the spray on hair, and they always had the meat axe so that
Right.
it wouldn't get, oh my God, it was just unbelievable.
Yeah.
But for every Dark
It was
Knight.
all about his hair. They used to put
Oh,
up
dude,
called it the Charlie bar.
Yeah, right, yes.
They'd light the
Yeah.
scene at the very last second before we shoot. They'd
With
put
his
the
stand-in,
Charlie
who-
bar
yeah,
up.
right.
That put a shadow right here, so you didn't
So,
focus
yeah,
on his
so
hair.
you didn't understand
'Cause
that
his
he
hair
had-
was receding
Yeah.
by his third movie. It was going way back, so he started doing hair transplants.
Did you ever put a radio mic on him?
Oh God, yeah. I went to Australia. What the
They
fuck do you
wouldn't
want?
let us do it. Oh, anyway.
Yeah.
I finally got one radio. I said, "There's no way to do this, Stephen." Blah 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 blah. And he's like, "Okay." But for every movie that you do that's successful or that's a good experience, I just you do a lot of. I mentioned that too. I'll show you my notes. Steven Seagal movie, or I worked on one of the, well, actually, the most awarded bad film in history. It's called I Know Who Killed Me, with Lindsay Lohan, and it is. I encourage everyone to watch it. It's really fantastically bad, and it won 8 Razzies. It was nominated for 9. It won 8. But so you never know what you're going to be working on. You know, I think I got along with everybody on that show, but nevertheless, you know, it's not something to be proud of. I guess it was a good time.
You guys have just crushed one of my idols.
Oh, sorry. How many did you do? I think after that one, John refused to go back.
What was the question?
Well, it's fine. It went in a different direction, but it's more fun, I think, than what I originally asked. Basically, you know, and that was more of a kind of a warm-up question anyway, to get people kind of talking, and it worked. But basically, if any questions pop up that you want to ask, you can see the level of gentlemen that we have up here. So feel free to ask them. Now let me just put something out. Let's go ahead and at least finish this going on down the way. Any movies or any TV shows, stories you want to tell, kind of fitting in line with what we've already kind of established here. Feel free to continue and either tell us some projects that you worked on to give people ideas of some questions to ask, or tell a fun story.
Well, you know, I agree with Chris, though. You've got to show up day one or in pre-production if you ever get that opportunity anymore.
They don't even let the mixers go through it.
Nope. So you're going to use everybody's knowledge to help you get the soundtrack somehow. And if you can put everybody on your side, they're all your friends, we're all there making a movie. We all forget sometimes it's a collaborative effort, and if you get any sort of an adversarial air, you're screwed. Because, you know, even if you got to make friends with the Teamsters, you got to make everybody. Everybody should be your friend. It's very difficult to do your job if somebody doesn't like you. So if you know what everybody does and you can help make their job easier, whether it's the craft service person, you know, or the grips carrying sandbags, asking them for flags, the electricians to flip the ballasts every time they turn on an HMI to silent. You know, it helps your plight. And so you start that day one and you become friendly with everybody on the set and they'll help you. It's not so much us against them, though I have heard that there is a mixer who says that the sound department is the only department that has one job. Everybody else has 2 jobs, which is their job in their department, and they help keep everybody quiet because they need a quiet soundtrack. So they have 2 jobs. The sound guy only has 1 to get a clean soundtrack. So, you know.
Sounds almost like one of those questions that they used to ask in school. I'm going to ask you one question, but it's going to have 500 parts. You know, that's kind of like what you're saying is one job, but there's 500 parts to it.
Right.
And to your point that it is very interesting that you say that you got to make sure everyone's on your side, because we need them. They don't need us. They're going to do their job in light and do whatever they need to. We need their cooperation. And if we don't have their cooperation, then we're sunk. So, Todd?
Hello, I'm going to talk about Steven Seagal for a second. I did 3 of his films.
Wow.
And
You win.
I like Steven because he liked me, but there's lots of people he didn't like. Here's a funny story. One day, he has around a half a page of dialogue. I go put the radio on him, and he says, "What the hell's this for?" And I said, "I'm good, you know, we need to put a mic on you to get all this dialogue." He says, "I'm going to do it with a look." Okay, fair enough. There you have it. He does it with a look, and I don't have to swing a stick over all that crap. But I did. I used to do movies early in my career, and then I went to TV, and I got on a TV show called NYPD Blue. I did that for 7 seasons. And talk about adversarial and not getting along. It was a cesspool. And it was just evil from year to year. And by the time I left, nobody was talking to each other. I couldn't get a cutter to save my life. They said, "There's a shadow." And I said, "Yeah, well, they won't give me a cutter, so the shadow's going to live there." and then suddenly things get done. But yeah, it's all about relationships, and it's a lot of personalities, a lot of different personalities you have to deal with. And one thing you can't let get in your way, I think, is ego. And I heard this the other day. Ego is a what's it called? Anyways, we're not going to talk about ego, but but no, it's definitely about relationships, and you really have to get along. And I end up biting my lip more often than not, because my friends and I, my mixer, we often say we just stand by and watch the stupid. And my rule 1 through 45, is don't get involved. I don't get involved in their crap, but I don't in any way, shape, or form, but I certainly don't criticize it. I don't take sides. And it's the only way to get things done. You really have to win them over. Sometimes it's easier, sometimes than others. No more Steven Seagal stuff. Carry on.
And Mike?
Well, just following up on relationships, I started out in New York, and electrics and grips always hated sound people in New York. It was an old-time thing. The old Irish guys were brought up in there. They would just, if you asked them for a stinger, or you asked them for any help or cutter, they would just, your sound, get the hell out of my way. But over the years, I found just by staying on the set, which is the most important factor I have, staying right there and picking your spot and holding your ground and watching as they're lighting and working with the grips and electric that you make a relationship with, they'll become your friends if you are knowledgeable of what you're doing and how to approach it. So I've gotten over the years, always the first thing, the key grip and electric and the gaffer, get friendly with them, and then their assistants, their best boys. And but a lot of people will go on the set and then leave and then come back later on and say, hey, I need a cutter here, or I need some help on that. And if you wait too long, they're never going to help you. So you got to stay on set and be working with them as they're lighting the set, if you can, and looking for all your shadows and problems, and also build a huge relationship with your camera operators, because if you have a good rapport with them, and years ago they used to give you a frame line, and they actually held the frame line, so you would get that mic as close as possible within inches. Years ago. Now, I used to work with Jimmy Sabat. I used to work with Jimmy Sabat in New York on a lot of features, and he would never open up that fader more than he had to, because he wanted that mic within inches of their forehead on the close-ups, or as close as possible. He didn't want any background noise into the track, and that's kind of like that's gone nowadays because of white and tights, and everybody resorts to radios right away. But having the pleasure now working on a feature where we're actually going back to booming, double booming on a show, and they're doing perspective, which was a great concept. I don't know why they got away from perspective. And then they would do medium shots, and then go in for coverage. And that's how we used to do it for 20 years. And this new style of shooting is like crazy, especially in TV shows. But once again, by staying on set, and boom operators, best thing to do is just stay there and work with them, and you'll get along with them really fine, and the project will work out really well.
So he's making you swing the 816? Is that what he's saying?
Every shot with an 8/16.
Oh yeah, I
Interior.
have a Tim Cooney story once. Doing the show The Punisher in Tampa, and he comes with his equipment. This huge trailer. There's nothing in that trailer except a 4x4 and his cart. And back in the day, he was using a Niagara, and he had one mic, an 816, for inside and outside. So we got this Steadicam shot walking down a hallway with the two actors. And I have to get through the doorway with the Steadicam, and I'm saying, how am I going to get through in an 816 and a Steadicam without dropping it in the shot? So he goes to me, well, I don't know. I don't read sides. I'm reading novels every day. He just reads books all day long. Never looked at sides. So I said, okay, I'm going to put the 816 out straight. You see how you like that? So I actually had to boom a shot through a door with an 816 straight out and come through the door, get through the operator. And it actually worked out pretty good, but he made my life miserable in that movie.
If you're not familiar with an 816, it's a microphone this long. And it seriously is, it's that long, and he's trying to, that's awesome. So let's actually go with that real quick here. I'm going to put this question out to the whole panel. What would you say are like 3 things that every boom operator needs to do, that you really need to make sure that you do if you're going to be a successful boom op on a set?
You need to know what the lens sees, first of all. And you need to know the scope of the shot, how long the shot's going, and the dynamics of the shot, where it's going to move throughout the set. But mostly what the lens sees, you need to learn lenses so that you can work the parameters of the thing, whether it's side, bottom, or top, and not poke yourself into the frame where everybody goes, "Oh, that's the best magic we've ever recorded," and there's a boom in it. Fuck, we gotta do it again. I mean, that's one thing right off the bat. So you gotta know what the camera's seeing.
Nowadays with there's monitors all over the set, and there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to know where you're at. But when we all started, we didn't have monitors or video assist. So you had to learn the lenses, and you had to be a good friend with that camera operator if you had a question to figure out a line on a, or when they're, on a 27 mil and they're going to tilt up or tilt down, of knowing when that's going to happen. Anticipation, that's what, one thing you always have to do is anticipate what's coming up. What are we going to be doing next? It's,
Now, I'm probably the youngest boom up here, and because of that, I didn't have the opportunity to learn the way these guys have. But I will say that camera operators will know when you know what you're doing. They'll be able to tell by how you run the set whether or not you understand lenses and things like that. I just worked on a show, and the operator was an older guy, and he made a couple comments to me of, I really appreciate you understanding lenses, because a lot of guys these days don't. So, and that just comes from experience. It takes time looking at the lenses, studying what frame sizes are and things like that. So, but that is very important, and people will give you more respect when they see that you actually know what you're doing.
And to that point, there's a lot of differences in the lenses. If you're shooting on anamorphic lenses, if you're shooting on 16 mil, then everything is like basically the focal length's almost doubled. If you're shooting on full sensors or 2/3 sensors, you sometimes run into those cameras.
Mhm.
Every single camera you work on, there's differences. I mean, if you shoot on a red, what are they extracting at?
Mhm.
They may shoot on full res, which is a 35 is a 35, but they could extract on a twice in on the frame, so it could be all on a 70. They could go on an 18 mil lens. If they extracted at 2K, it becomes like a 90 mil lens. So you got to. To that point, you really do need to know even about the cameras.
Yeah, Walking Dead was a unique experience when I did some second unit stuff, because I hadn't worked with 16 mil before.
Yeah.
And so I had to, in my mind, basically every lens they put on, you have to double what that is. And if you don't know that stuff, you're not going to be anywhere close to being usable.
One difference, and I totally agree with the standpoint, mostly it's on the camera side, the visual. One thing to know is understanding modulation of electronics, knowing how to work a microphone and being able to hear the modulation of the preamp or the RF transmission that you're doing is essential, because basically, like I grew up in music and still do, you are half the part of a singer, and any good singer modulates a microphone when they're singing by distance. So to me, I might fare a little differently on technique than a lot. I keep modulation consistent pretty much from shot to shot within mediums and tights. I'm not one that dives in and rides a frame line as much as I keep modulation in my ear correct from shot to shot, and it gives more of a consistency to the editing mix. But to me, knowing the electronic side along with the lenses and all, lenses are all very important. But being able to actually hear it, I see a lot of thirds and boom ops using what I would say kind of an inferior monitoring system. So to me, how you monitor something becomes extremely important if you're actually going to try to actually hear what on-axis and the modulation of the preamps and stuff that the recorder's using. Record mixers that are good Just like any music mixer will try to modulate their gain so that they're riding the best signal to noise. If you can work hand in hand with the mixer, knowing that you're going to be doing the same on the other end with the microphone, just like a person singing on a stage in a live situation with the mixer in front of house, it becomes like an art, and the end track is very, very smooth.
And that's an interesting point too. Boom operators are mixers because we have to know how things sound. We have to know the coverage. We do have to know how the microphone needs to be positioned on set. But if two people are if we're booming two people, we can't have one person point blank and the other person a mile and a half away because it's not gonna sound right for the scene. So the mixer will instantly pull up a plan, or they'll instantly pull up the lav even if you're not playing them the right way. So that's a really critical point right there. Do you find that a lot of mixers are in line with that? Because I've run into a lot of mixers that are like, no, just get that mic as close as you can. I'll handle that.
Correct. It depends on the mixer. Usually, if I run into a mixer at first that is of that ilk, once they hear the difference of, say, when someone is quiet and soft, and actually hear the modulation of the microphone in the space versus them doing up and down with their gain knob, if their ear can hear it, they'll know that the difference of the A and B is an easy decision.
Yeah.
And then once that's learned or won over, then the rest of it goes much simpler.
Yeah, that's the term won over, because I think that a lot of guys are, these hardcore frame line riders. They want you to be right there. If they don't see you in the safety, they're, maybe a little, but yeah, exactly. You win them over because it's a dance. And when I was first explained how important booming was, again, by Mo Chamberlain, who's a great mixer in LA, commercial guy, so you don't really see his credits on IMDb, but he was talking about watching Don Sufel, and he goes, yeah, Sufel is just he's like a ballet dancer. He's back and forth with the mic. He goes, somebody gets his arms really out here, and then he gets right in. And you're just constantly diving in and just finding the cherry. Jay Patterson calls it the cherry. Finding the sweet spot with somebody's voice and trying to keep it even. I mean, it's important to try to keep it even. And I think instinctively you do that after you do it for a while. I mean, I just find that I do funny little things, and I think about it afterwards after I go, oh, why did I went like an eighth of an inch that way just because the guy did something. But yeah, it is. It's a little dance that you do with the actor, and you're almost as responsible for their voice as they are. Maybe more so in some cases of real quiet people.
Just all along the same line, I was originally going to say I don't think it's in the top 3 of what he's asking, but in reference to modulation, and he mentions art. The game has always been an art for me from day one. I was taught to look at it as an art. I came from editing, being in television, and so I had a really good understanding of how one line cuts with another, and then another, and then another. And I took that experience, and then when I got into booming, the sound mixer from day one taught me about keeping the modulation equivalent like that. And how do you do that? Okay, back to the top 3. One of the main things I'm looking at when I watch a rehearsal is the movement of the actors. Their head turns. What way are they saying the line? And usually after several rehearsals, you get a feel for how they're going to move, their body position, their face position.
What does that mean, several rehearsals?
Blocking rehearsals.
Take one is rehearsal
blocking
nowadays.
If they let you into, we'll watch the blocking rehearsals.
And I'm not talking about a
It's so
camera-ready
important.
rehearsal. I'm talking about from the get-go. If you can be there when they are initially reading the lines,
Right.
and then they start the blocking rehearsal, and then hopefully they do a rehearsal for the crew with the cameras. By then you have a really good idea usually how they're going to move. I was taught from the very beginning to get that microphone going. Like when I boom, when I'm really on my game, I am constantly moving like that, reaching and blending. When they look away from me, I kind of decide how I want that to sound. I want it to sound just a little bit farther away and sound like he's turning away from me, but still on mic. That microphone still has to be there. When he goes up against a window or a wall, the sound is doubled. So I back off a little. Most of the boom operators I work with, especially the second boom ops, they still shove that microphone right in there, and I just go, golly, it's just way too loud. So I'm about halfway up from what I'd normally be, and as that guy turns, I go back down into full voice. When he goes away, I balance everything all the way through the process. And that's the difference between a top-notch boom operator and someone who doesn't quite get it.
All boils down to listening, which you've heard me
Yes.
say a lot in a lot of classes.
Yeah.
And to your point, acoustics are a big part of it. Whether someone's sitting on a table with their face over it, or they sit back a little bit, or they even that little bit of a difference, that totally changes because you're then playing the microphone off the table. So yeah, there's all kinds of it. Now, did anybody else want to add anything to things that boom operators need to do?
I'll add something.
Yeah.
I always found that when you go into watch a rehearsal, if you get a rehearsal, it's good to, if the mixer would go in, that you both see the scene the same way, how it's going to happen, how you're going to play that scene. And a lot of times, I've been working with some people recently that, we'll see a scene and we'll disagree on how we're going to do it, but then at some point you build that relationship with your boom operator in the mixer, that you see the scene exactly on the same level, and how you're going to, one guy's going to play that guy deep in the wire or this wire, and then you need some help when you get together, and then the boom guy takes over, or you have a second boom. But it's good to know that you walk out of rehearsal that you have a boom operator that thinks exactly how the mixer would do it in his head, and that's important. And also memorizing dialogue. I find that nowadays people don't memorize the dialogue very well. So if they have to swing the pole, they don't even know what the last word of that actor is before they have to gracefully move the mic over. I say gracefully because a lot of people whip the mic and all you hear is wind noise. So you have to know your dialogue pretty well before you walk into that rehearsal. You should actually read the sides. And I have a little trick of highlighting the last words and scratching out all the bullshit direction that doesn't mean anything to us. And then when I watch the rehearsal, it's already sunk into my head what they're going to say. And if you get one rehearsal, you have it down pretty pat. So when they're rolling, you're set to go. And you can move that mic around. And I had a case where I had like 8 people around a conference room table, and I did the whole table by myself because it just, the dialogue was written good, so it kind of made sense to you. And then if you memorize it correctly, you can just swing that pole around and capture everybody without using wires. So I always find that that's important. And of course, they said about lenses. Lenses is crucial. A lot of people, younger people, don't know lenses, and that's really important to know your lenses and how close you can get that mic, and listen for the sweet spot. And most of the time, the sweet spot's right here, and you got to aim for that spot. I notice a lot of people in town, I know they were trained that the mic shoots straight down, and I never was trained that way. I always have the mic angled in and hitting a spot like right there. And you got to listen for it. You can fine tune that depending on the actor, like they said, and then you'll be great at what you do.
Quick note about rehearsals. I have just gotten in the habit of when they call private rehearsals, I go on set, I hide, and I just, more often than not, I'm not kicked out. I just be quiet, I sit in a corner, I listen, and I found that gives me an advantage of, not just getting the one marking rehearsal, but I've been there, I've heard what the director said, any changes they make happen at that point, and those don't always get relayed, and it just kind of gives you a little leg up on what's about to happen.
Yeah, seeing just that one marking rehearsal is often misleading because, a lot of times they will have done 3, 4, 5, maybe even more, and they'll have done something different. And so when the director goes, hey, that thing you were doing before, do that. Oh, but so if all you've seen is the marking rehearsal, you have no idea. And I do the same thing. I just hang. Like if the gaffer's over here, I kind of like get a little behind him or something. I'm shorter usually than people.
Which we shouldn't have to hide.
We shouldn't have to, but the point
But
is
we
that the first AD that I'm working with right now in this movie, Night School, he literally pointed to a PA the first day that I was on the set and said, "Okay, clear everybody out." Literally, there's whoever else is in there. We got 3 camera 2 operators and the DP. And I'm like, I go, really? So I just kind of eventually just kept leaning in, and now it's Now it's cool. Now he's kind of okay with me being there. Again, if you shut up, because a lot of times too, the marking rehearsal turns into a situation where the DP and here you're going in to hear the one time that you're going to hear the actors talk. This is the non-private rehearsal, and the DP talks to the director nonstop, and the DP's telling the gaffer where he wants lights and what you got to do. And I'm just trying to hear the actors do it one time. And guess what? They're having a good time. They're realizing that it's not that serious, and they just start fucking around. So they start ad-libbing and being silly and talking about something else. So you got, I fight to get on those rehearsals. I mean, I've literally pushed the envelope. It's worth it.
That's where I feel like that's where your relationships with either the first AD, the camera operator, you talk to the first AD and say, you know how this is going to go. We're going to get to the marking rehearsal. They've already changed the dialogue. They're not going to do it. They go, you're going to go over here, and he's going to go over there, and they throw down some tape, and everybody goes away. You don't hear it, and you don't get the 2.5 pages of rewrites. You don't even have a heads up that that's coming. So when they get there and you roll on the first rattle out of the box to capture the magic, you don't know what the hell's going on. So if you're hanging with the camera operator who's got to see it, you become seen as, oh yeah, they're supposed to be here. Oh yeah, they're supposed to be here. And they don't really, the director and the actors get used to seeing you, and they're not worried that you're going to, witness their problems being creative. That's not why you're there to watch anything go south. You're there to find out how you can do your job better.
And that's precedent. Starting that precedent early in a show is critical. You're right. And it's funny, by hiding on set like that, they start to your point, they start to realize that you're part of that you're part of the crew. They're not going to say, he's annoying me or whatever. If you're in their eye line, which is the reason why you hide, then of course you're going to probably interfere with their creative process. But as long as you are, removed from that, that's excellent points right there. It's funny, I'm gonna just real quick here. It's funny you were talking about memorizing dialogue. It's great when you memorize the dialogue, but the actors don't, and the actors change it. And going back to the rehearsal process, you can tell and which actors do and do not know their lines. And if you land on an actor and the actor doesn't speak, and then they say, well, let's change this, or something like that, or they just totally change, that's when you need to do something differently. But it's funny, during the marking rehearsals or during the rehearsals themselves, you can very easily say, you could tell who is going to know their lines and who's not going to. You can tell by an actor's face if they're not happy with the way something plays, and that they're going to turn around as soon as you're out of that and they're going to lighting. Who's going to be making those changes? Who's going to be changing the way something works by the time you get to the scene? So by knowing your actors and by being on part for that process, that's critical as well. Another good reason to get in for marking rehearsals. Sorry, Max, go ahead.
It's a comment that's kind of out of line, and it may seem small, but it's actually huge if you want to be a boom operator. It relates to art, modulation, and everything else we're talking about. Microphone placement. He mentioned down here a second ago about, okay, we put it here and we aim here. But rarely does anybody teach you that this is also acceptable if you have to do that. But then they never teach you that this is acceptable when you have to do it. You can use all of this area. We as humans hear out of these things. These are microphones right here. These ears are microphones. They hear. It sounds better when we're up on this level. We capture that there. Rarely do we ever listen from down here unless we're short or very young, but sometimes you have to do that to get the shot. But again, rarely do I ever hear people talking about the sideline. As long as that microphone is pointed out in front of them, why doesn't this work? This can work very well. It probably even sounds better than this. And so when I was saying I'm constantly moving, many times that's part of it. I'm swinging a sideline, coming underneath, and going back up and over the top, constantly trying to even out all the levels. One last little thing. I see that not only are boom operators in general, I guess you guys would agree, we tend to be short. Ever notice that? If anything, we tend to be short. So I'm constantly pushing the guys to go another 6 inches or another foot. Very important. Down here, what I see is they tend to shoot into the chest. The other day, a guy told me, well, I was taught to shoot at the chest. Well, if you're underneath and you're shooting at the chest, you're way off mic.
Yeah.
You want to be shooting up here. You want to be shooting up here out in front of them. I look at it as zone, miking.
It's the bubble. It's like a cartoon that comes out with the
Yeah,
dialogue.
yeah.
There's a bubble.
You're really
You
shooting
want to
for
get
this
into
zone.
that bubble.
Whether you're here or here, you're shooting for that zone. Okay, so very important, very critical.
One thing to piggyback off that, I notice a lot of times, maybe someone's doing off camera or just coming from behind an actor to get things, and it drives me crazy to see the microphone out in front of them but pointing away from the actor. That people always forget they have to kick the mic back, especially if you're coming from behind. I see it all the time. Makes me crazy.
Yeah, and then this breaks theory too. Sometimes you cannot get out in front of them because of a shadow, maybe a reflection, but believe it or not, you can actually have the microphone above their head, but be pointed out into the zone, and it'll work. It's pretty amazing how that'll work.
Yeah, I think that comes from understanding the pickup patterns of the microphone, the equipment you're using. So if you're using a cardioid, it's going to sound a lot more natural in that space. You'd use that for tighter stuff, but it's not going to have that reach that you're wanting. So you wouldn't use that for a wide shot. And so it's about understanding what the mic's going to pick up, but it's also understanding what the mic's not going to pick up and how the reflections will interfere with what you're doing. So a longer mic in a very reflective space is going to really accentuate those reflections, where a wider pattern will make it sound more natural. So even though it's still echoey, it's a natural echo that makes sense to your ears when you're looking at the picture.
Having the sound match picture is critical, and that's right in line with what he's saying right there. You don't want to pick a microphone like an 816 if you're going to be in a hard room with a bunch of hard surfaces. It's going to be hearing everything. Remember the way that microphone listens. It is very directional, and that's part of picking out the right microphone. Knowing the gear is critical, but it's not really what we concentrate on. We're not the gearhead. We know enough about the gear, but we're not gearheads when we get on set to figure out what the shot entails. That's when we know the gear just enough to know what we need to do with it.
There's also, everybody's different too. To go here and try to hit here is a typical goal for most men, but it doesn't always work for everybody. Sometimes you got to aim at the bridge of their nose, their chin. Everybody resonates a little differently in whatever space they're in. And I've told this to a few people, but I will often, if nobody's bouncing around and I can lock off, I close my eyes.
Mm-hmm.
I literally close my eyes, and I don't know, not for a long time, but and then you listen, because there's too much else going on. If you close your eyes, you shut out a lot of information, and you can concentrate on just listening, and making little tiny tweaks. And maybe that pays off, but it certainly has on occasion. It's worth trying, as long as your subject's not bouncing all over the place.
Is it okay that we're getting into all these little boom
Yeah,
techniques?
absolutely.
I just have one other thing. For Max and what Kurt's saying, a lot of times I find that people, if they have to play from the side, they can't get in front of the guy or something. So they're playing from the side, and let's say I'm shooting for Kevin down there. But my perspective, my eye line, I'm either going to be too short or too long and not centered over him. So a boom operator in New York once, Linda Murphy, which is a great boom operator, she taught me a trick where, a lot of people's perspective is way off. So the only trick you can do is you lower the mic and you practice, and you come down to the actor's head and go back up, and now you're set. And you kind of lock off that that person's right there. Otherwise, you'll wind up the mic here, or you'll wind it up here, and you'll hear the difference when you're centered over that person versus being left or right. And a lot of people you get accustomed to not doing that, and sometimes they're off. So it's always a good little test to do that, a little trick to do it.
Yeah, sorry. Mine will be really
I am
quick.
so full of ideas
Just
now.
playing off what Mike said. When I first started really booming, I used to do that with when there wasn't first team there, I would lower my mic like down to the mark on the floor and bring it up, you know, if a stand is not there, or I'd get to stand in to,
Absolutely.
you know, just tell me, am I right over your face? Am I too short? You know, I'm just going to come down and touch your head and then go back up. And that really helps you figure out, okay, I'm usually too short. So just get in the habit of pushing out more, or you too long. So you back off a little bit.
I've been doing this thing. It's a lot of fun. We've talked about building relationships. Well, you know, we need to build relationships with our stand-ins. I use my stand-ins a lot in cars to help me out and on set. And I've been doing this thing lately where I'll have them look at me and I'm booming, you know, and I'm kind of having fun with it. And I'll put the microphone where I think it needs to be. Usually it's on the longer shots, you know, maybe as far as Alan away from me. And I'll put it where I want, and I'll drop it straight down and try to hit their nose with the foam. And the stand-ins are kind of liking it. They think it's cute. Don't do that, but
Oh, I mess with our stand-ins all the time. I tickle the back of their head and do all kinds of stuff to them. I mean, but you're right. I mean, that's the mark, whatever. The other thing is, now this is a new thing, and I swear on our show it happens all the time. As soon as the DP says, okay, we're good. Okay, second team, run away. You know, it's like they just, now that the DP has all of his lights and flags and everything set, and I can start swinging around, I swear to God, they're just, you know, it's like it's evacuating them or something from the set. It's like in the old days, I mean, 5 years ago, second team stood on the marks until first team showed up. Well, it doesn't seem like a really obtuse concept, but I really see a lot of that, and Marcus knows because he's nodding back there. Constantly, they run them away. So I'm going, and I'm just like, no, wait, Joe, wait, you know, so that I get a chance to do what I got to do. I don't know what, it's like another new thing that I don't like about the way films are made.
I'm going to actually tell it real quick. It goes in line with that. A few years ago, I was booming on a show, and I came in there as a day player. The mixer ended up liking me and wanting to replace his regular guy with me, and I had a very slow year, so I said, okay. So I did this, and my first day driving to set, I got something in my eye, start rubbing my eye, and knocked my contact out, and it slits itself in half. So I continue to get there, and of course, anyone who's had one contact in and one eye out knows it messes with your depth perception. So here I am, day one, taking over this show with this mixer, and my depth perception is all off. I'm like throwing the microphone out there, and I'm like looking, it looks like it's right on him, and I'm 3 feet this way. And I'm like, what is going on? And I'm trying to dial it in, and I can't really dial it in. So then we realize there's a big problem, because I take the utility and say, I'm going to throw this right over your head. Don't look at the microphone, because that's going to, you know, you see the microphone get closer. It's cheating. Throw the microphone out there, and I said, so where am I? I'm like, right here over you. He says, no. I said, where am I? He does this, reaches forward, takes a little step, and touches the mic. I'm like, oh, this is going to be a long day. And my mixer's like, what the crap's going on? So I started asking everybody around if anybody has glasses that I could try to see if I could dial in. Finally, someone, my mixer, happened to have a pair of glasses that matched my prescription. I'm like, this is great. Now let's do this again. I'm going to throw the microphone out there. I throw the microphone out there, and I say, now I'm right on you, right? He says, no. I say, so where am I? He goes, behind him. I was 2 feet on the other side of him. So my mixer's like, oh my God, where's the other guy? So yeah, make sure you have extra contacts with you, or glasses, or something like that. Make sure you have a backup.
Yeah, I always carry an extra pair of glasses.
That was a good learning experience for me that day.
So if you can't do that, though, it's about hearing. And hearing
that's
when.
the answer.
I was so far off, I couldn't dial in. I was like, why am I so off on this?
Marco
I went
Polo.
for a year with Michael Clark. I had a cataract, totally off. I didn't know I had a cataract. I thought I needed to have my vision checked. I didn't say a word to him, and then after it was all done, I was like, you know, I've had this cataract for the last year and had no depth perception. And anyway, you got to listen. Yeah. You got to do any trick you can think of. Do that trick. Put the thing on their nose. Whatever.
So a lot of this has been talked about is excellent from that perspective. One thing to think of, which is in the same perspective, but is the three-dimensional box that you're in. So utilize the space that you're in when you're looking at a microphone into the actual three-dimensional space. So you can use the lines and the markers of everything around you so that when they do the rehearsals, whatever, and all these guys know this, it just hadn't been touched on. When they're moving around, you make your mental marks where something is. So when you're flowing through, you know when you get over here, you have to be in this area because you've made a three-dimensional mark, kind of like making a virtual reality in your head, and the microphone moves around in it, and it's all a grid. That's something that I just see. I'm sure that comes with time, but the nose thing, all of that is all within this physical realm, but also think about the visual of outside and the box that you're in, and that can be done outside or inside of or anywhere.
There's also sound pressure levels. Each actor, this is where it really helps to sit on those blocking or before the blocking rehearsal, the reading. You're sitting on the reading and you can hear their voices. And many times I will say, and theoretically, again, we're taught to shoot here. But sometimes when you have usually a female actress and their sound pressure level is very low and their voices are very soft, I'll save putting my microphone right here for them. And then the guy that has the real strong voice, I know I'll be playing off of him a little bit. Again, it's all about balance, but I try to save bringing that mic right here because this kind of fattens up the sound when you put it in there tight like that.
And different microphones sound differently. So,
Yeah.
I mean, you could
Yeah.
have a microphone with a more low-end presence boost, or they could want you to use the high shelf on it, and it has a higher boost on there. So you got to understand how to play the pattern there.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, there's a lot of tricks. There's one trick I use in particular is I usually work with the stick fully extended because I just don't like it short. So I get as far back away from everything and I sit it out there and I'll just touch things on the set. I'll just reach out and touch a light. Usually I'm slamming barn doors and they make a very distinct sound, so you have to do it quick and disappear. But I just go out, I just touch things because it's like recalibrating. You have to recalibrate your brain and your eyes to where the microphone, where it was yesterday, is not where it's going to be today, as far as your mind's concerned.
Retrain your muscle memory.
That's
essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you've ever had any Fisher boom training, I don't know if anybody has, you used to practice like setting it into the little cup that they have a series of cups, smaller cups that you could put it in, see if you could be 16 feet out and just, right in the cup. Do the same
And
thing.
it's funny,
with
even
the-
depending on the lighting. If it's more backlit, it's more silhouetted, and that messes with
tougher.
your depth
Oh,
perception.
yeah.
So yeah, even the lighting itself can mess with you.
Yeah, I was working to bring Steven Seagal back into this. We were shooting on a train, and of course I had the stick as far as it can go. And Steven comes around the corner. Steven's around 6'4", and we're on a train, and I hit him in the head, right around the hairline. And he says that's a cut. I said, oh, sorry about that. He says, if you do it again, I'm gonna have to kick your ass. I said, well, why wait for me to do it again? Meet me outside in 10 minutes. I'm not there. Start without me. So, you got to get laughing. I did hit him again, though.
It happens. I've hit somebody in the head before, and it's not a fun thing. It's not. I was very embarrassed. It was
An actor or?
an actor. Yeah, during the take, it was Stranger Things season 1. I hit David in the head.
He's a tall guy though.
He's tall. Yeah.
He's tall, and we were in
And there's low ceilings a lot.
we were in Winona's house, and he comes rushing in through the door, and there's like 10 camera people around me, and I'm just trying to fight for my life at that moment, and I just quickly bonk him on the head in the mid, and he just starts cussing right there in the middle of the shot. Yeah, so it's you recover, but kind of puts enough fear in you to not want to do it again.
Those are endearing moments.
Yeah.
It's a moment between
Yeah.
you and the thespian.
Yeah.
And be careful when actors are sitting down, especially if you're trying to figure out where something is and you keep looking behind you, give them some air, because that's the moment that they'll choose to stand up.
Yep.
Is if you have your mic over them and you're like, where's that light coming from? Boop, they're gonna stand up, and they're gonna blast out of that seat too.
They're not aware you're there.
Yeah, and you take your eyes off them 1 second. It's like a child. You can't do it. All right. So what are some things that you would say boom operators should avoid doing? Some really bad practices that you've seen boom operators do that you do not think that a boom operator should be doing on a set.
Hitting actors in the head.
Yeah. usually we're
Thank
the
you
only
for saying
only
that.
boom operator on the set, so it's kind of hard to. I've known Max
Yeah.
for years. I used to call him to fill in for me at NYPD Blue. I didn't meet him until 6 years ago. But this was 10 years ago. We used to talk on the phone. So there's only one of us. So we really don't understand. We don't talk to each other much either. We're kind of antisocial.
I'm sure you've heard stories though. You've heard, oh, geez, that was the guy that was before me. Oh, now I know why I'm here, or something. I'm sure heard those stories or heard.
No, I'm usually the guy getting fired. So.
Oh, okay.
You don't hear the stories.
No, I
Just
hear the
move on to the
stories.
next.
How many times have you been fired?
I don't want to talk about it.
You know, one of the things that go ahead. Yeah.
My question is, I'm trying to get into the sound department now. My name's Holland Hamilton, by the way.
Holland,
Out of the country.
Hi, Holland.
Hey guys. And I was wondering, what's like a rookie mistake that you guys made that you remember personally when you just got in as a boom op? If you could tell me that, that'd be great.
You don't want to get run over by the dolly
Yeah.
while you're looking
Watch
out,
for the dolly.
trying to, make cues, and all of a sudden your ankles are being crushed, and the camera operator's flipping the camera up and looking at you, going, "What the?" That's one thing.
Of course, in our day coming up, they actually used to use dollies.
Oh yeah, that's
As opposed to using them to just
Yeah.
put them in our way.
When we came up, there could be as many as 11 marks on a dance floor where that dolly operator had to hit to get the scene. Nowadays, we just throw up the steady camera, handheld, boom, and go do it.
Oh, and the actors would hit marks
Yeah.
because that's where they were lit.
Yeah.
We don't do that much anymore. So I would say if you end up, and I know things have changed where our utilities do a lot of the wiring, but these days and times, if you end up doing any wiring as a utility or boom operator, don't ever go into somebody's trailer without somebody with you. Just as general practice, whether it's a child or an A-list actor, just always have a costumer or somebody come in with you. It's just better because, frankly, not all actors are really with us. And just saying.
Or just don't wire in their trailer. Make
Yeah,
them come
I
to
always-
your part.
I
Yeah,
find
if
it's
you
bad
can do it
practice
on
to
their
set
set.
precedent,
Yeah.
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 They say go to the trailer, you lose your utility for 20, 30 minutes while
Right.
doing hair and makeup, so I always say no. We're going to wire them
And you're
on
waiting
set.
outside on the trailer, not doing
Yeah,
anything.
not
Doing
doing
nothing.
nothing.
Or better yet,
Losing
when they
time.
are done with hair and makeup and come to you, that it gets announced, okay, they're out of hair and makeup, well, let's just bring them to set. And then they forget that there's a sound guy standing there,
Right.
and they only want to give you 30 seconds.
Yeah.
So it's best if you
With
can
the
get
first
those.
time you've ever seen the costume. Right.
Exactly. Yeah. It's
Remember the word precedent. You start a precedent of going to wire on trailers, it's going to be the whole show. If you start a precedent of something, no, just bring them to us on their way to set. That'll be the precedent. you
With
establish.
all their props on.
Yes.
Which they don't do
Yeah,
now.
the last
They-
step before
Last
set.
second, they just throw a bag on, a purse on them or some other prop that messes up.
Totally
the vibe.
changed everything. Now we have to do it again.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, one thing that I would consider a rookie mistake, and yet people who've been in this business for years still do it, is doing the woe is me sound guy. Where, oh man, I can't, it's like I can't get a break or whatever. Everybody's against me. I just hear a lot of that still from people, along the lines of, us against them. And who said it's not us against them? I guess that's true.
not.
No, it is. No, you're right. It's us with them, and that's it. Collaboration is the key. But still, ultimately, the people that care about sound are the two guys you're working with and you. And you don't want to make it seem like you're getting beat on like a redheaded stepchild or whatever. So
Grow thick skin and don't let stuff bother you. It's got to bounce
roll
off.
off.
Because in the end, our stuff can be fixed later. You do everything you can to deliver the best sound you can. But in the end, they'll replace it if it's bad. You just got to go home at the end of the day going, well, we did as much as we could.
that's just it. You get the best sound that they'll let you get, and you work with them to have them let you get more. But a lot of times you're still fighting, whatever it is. I feel like sometimes people are guilty of trying to do too much. You've got to. It looks like an impossible situation. I think I can get in there, but then you can't, and then they get. It just depends. The more they trust you, more, especially an operator or even the DP you'll hear from, well, you got in and maybe it's not that big a deal or whatever. But then the more you do that, the less you're ingratiating yourself to them and the less kind of forgiving they become. And then you can't be, they've got to get their shot. You've got to get out of the frame or out of the shadow. You get your shadow out of the frame or whatever it is. I'm trying to think of a rookie mistake, though.
I have
Mike,
one I was
gotta be
thinking of. One mistake is having too short a pole.
Yep.
And a lot of people, when they start out, they don't want to extend it any more than they have to, thinking the weight's a problem. But it's actually a longer pole is in your benefit as far as saving your arms over time, and also for reach. And so you want to get in that room and find a corner that you're stuck in, and figure out what's the most pole I can get into that room without banging into that corner, and not being short. Because a lot of times you're short, and then you can't reach when that actor goes to a different mark, and then you're screwed. You're not even going to be there. So I always say use as much pole as possible to save your arms and to get the shot.
And that's a really good point, because you can only go out so far before you're choking up on the pole.
Yeah.
And you're throwing your shoulders.
Yeah, you
your
don't want to
back
be
and
in a
everything
position
out.
like this all the time. You're not going to hold it very long there. It's
Yeah.
going to start hurting you really bad.
I would say
Yeah.
the worst position to ever be in is up against the corner wall. We've all been there, and you had to do it, but it's like the worst place to ever be.
I've yet to see a set big enough where they don't put one or two cameras in the corner. You could have a football field. Oh, we're right here.
And they don't pull walls anymore like they used to. They used to pull walls and give you space to go back and forth. They don't pull walls anymore.
It takes too much time.
Yeah.
I'd like to back us up just for a second and talk about when two people going to if you have to go enter a trailer, two people entering the trailer. Is that a liability? Is that to limit your liability against accusations and?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Well, especially with kid actors.
Yeah.
Oh yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
so you have kids and grandkids, and you deal well with kids, but
Yeah, because if you're livening somebody up, you reach into some
you're
very
getting personal with
places.
these people.
Yeah.
I mean, Paramount makes us sign background checks now if you're working with kids.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
it's
There's a
just
whole sound
cover
department to
yourself.
All right.
Yeah, I won't wire a kid. I will make sure the parent and the costumer is present, and I will assist them, but I will not be the one who does it. I will tell them what to do.
That's a good
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's not ideal, but
No, but I just feel safer and
And
beats
this,
being on that list.
in this day and age, it's people. I mean, you still have the words "creepy sound guy" that
Sure.
you hear around on set, and you don't want to come across as too strong. It's better to back off and say, "I need you to help me with this." And costumers are much more willing to help in situations with children, especially if you explain, what you're doing there.
I mean, it's our livelihood. It's our livelihood.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
that you get fired from a job once because of that, you're done.
All it takes is one bad experience that an actor has with someone wiring them, and that messes it up for everybody else. So you want to avoid those mistakes, so then the actor's friendly to you to wire them. But if someone messes it up, you're kind of stuck with that, working on that project with that person.
Yeah.
Where they have to wire it themselves, and they never put it in the right spot, without some guidance.
Well, coming from another side of the industry, I have a lot of people up all the time.
Yeah, sorry, we're trying to record this.
You're
before
off
so-
mic. I can't hear you.
Well, coming from another side of the industry, I have to lob people up all the time. And these are executives from $12 and $15 billion companies, right? So they have no experience whatsoever with microphones. So I have approximately 30 seconds to get them lobbed up and push them out in front of the camera. So the thing that works best with them is I explain every move that I'm making. I'm sorry, I have to reach. I'm going to drop this down the back of your blouse, right? And I'm going to pull it out, and I'm going to hook this to your belt loop, and I specifically say every action that I'm going to take, and that takes them off their guard.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of times they're pushing me back into the green room, and I'm alone. Or they just came out of makeup, and it's just me and the actor. So I mean. So I'm just taking it to heart that I should have somebody with me when I'm doing that. Maybe not in the field that I'm working in now, but if I'm getting into
you're
film,
talking corporate, commercial
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, it's probably different. At the end of the day, you got to do what you got to do, and sometimes the situation doesn't allow. But when it comes to kids, there's no flexibility there.
I
have to
usually
be with
just
somebody.
tell them, if you're by yourself and what you're doing is great, just tell them, well, we don't want to show our tricks with this beautiful, whatever it is you're wearing, your $400 camel hair suit shirt or whatever it is. This we don't want to see our tricks. We want them to look at you.
But it's also just getting, like, if you're on a feature or TV series that's long running and you have like recurring actors and actresses, your stars, I mean, they get used to you. It's just having them gain your trust. You know what you're doing, so you don't have to explain every step to them after a while. But it's always good to, if you have a good wardrobe department, they're going to be hanging around anyways. They want to make sure that, if you're miking a tie or something, that it looks right, and just gaining everyone's trust. I mean, there's never ever a reason that, that you should be put into a situation where you have to wire somebody like a child or a female off in a trailer. I mean, that can always be worked out. And you should, get that respect from your first AD to let him know, I need extra time with this person, or we have to have somebody here with that. I think that's a pretty important thing. And sometimes they'll try to rush you. Well, here's the kid. Well, where's the wardrobe person? Where's their, the person from the state that's, watching these kids? So it's just always two people for that.
Don't show up on the set with a donut and a coffee in your hand as a rookie and walk in and go, we're ready to roll, and put it down on the set. Don't ever take your junk onto the set. And if you do take your junk onto the set, take your junk off the set as soon as you can. Because, I see it all the time, people, especially the camera divas, it's like, put it right here and leave it, walk off, because there's somebody else that's going to pick up after them. Try not to leave your trash around. Don't leave any tracks is my kind of like mantra.
And what's funny is the operator who leaves the water bottle on set, 20 seconds later will see it in their lens and they'll be bitching, who did that? And that's, I've heard that happen too. It's like, no brain, obviously, you don't remember.
No memory.
So, yeah, absolutely, come on.
It might sound a little elementary, but I come from the concert world, and film is somewhat new. We mic humans, we hear humans all day long. What about animals? If I ever run into the situation, I know a lot of it's post, but as a boom op, do I play an animal? Do I follow it?
It depends on what part of the story they are.
If they're making it bark,
sure.
Heck yeah, why not?
Okay.
I wouldn't put a lava on the dog. But
No.
Hey, I put lava on a horse once.
I think the rule of thumb is whatever the camera sees is what you want to
What you
capture
wanna
sound.
hear.
If you see it, you want to hear it.
Yeah, but the other thing is sometimes the animals will be distracted from something floating around over their
That's
head.
my
So
biggest
just
concern.
being, kind of like just being out there, like when they're a minute away or so, just put that pole over and just stand out there so that animal gets used to it. Or even, there's been, like, I did Pet Detective, Ace Ventura Pet Detective, and we had tons of animals on the first one. And so just getting, working with the trainer for the animals and see how they have done with, have these animals been exposed to microphones. But because some of the trainers I've talked to, they practice with the animals with something floating over their head from time to time. And
Copy that.
Yeah, you want to get with the trainer as soon as possible and just ask them about it, and maybe not just a minute. I mean, I've floated mics over horses just to give them, are they going to watch it? Is it going to bother them? Some of them, stoic, they're cool. Other ones get all freaked out. Dogs do it too.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Talk to the wranglers, especially with horses, because you don't want
Spook.
horses to go off on a set. That's just.
And that also goes with kids, babies. I mean, on the show I'm on right now, we have little infants, and they see something floating around over their head. They're like, oh crap, I got to get the hell out of here now, or just kind of keep it there, and they'll get used to it. And sometimes, like our actors, like on the show, that they kind of distract those kids to get them back down because they'll pick up on it.
And to that point, the kids are going to see the thing floating over them, and they're going to follow the pole back to you.
Yeah.
And if you're looking at the kid, they're going to be looking back at you and constantly doing this.
Mm-hmm.
Act like it's no big thing. Don't even pay any attention to it. Have it out there over their head. Not give them any eye contact, because then they're going to, oh, okay, it must just be something normal here. And it's funny. And to the point about the animals, one thing I want to make, if there's a special animal, not just a cat, dog, one of the more common ones that we run into, especially one that has any kind of aggression, make sure you definitely talk to that wrangler and keep the microphone offset until you have done that. And then as soon as you find out they're cool, introduce it on set and become familiar with it. Years ago, there was a bull, and they were like, oh yeah, the bull's no problem. As soon as the microphone went over the actor's head, the bull dialed in on it and started getting showing aggression toward the side of the fence. So, you know, you have to keep in mind any specialty animal.
If you need a mic a bull, you can talk to John Pritchett. He's super glued a microphone to a bull.
Bull friendly.
Thank you, fellas.
It's a specialty we all have. Mine is off-camera dialogue. Yes.
Hi guys, Hugo Kundert. As far as being on set and who you guys need to gravitate towards to, is it the first AD, the DP, the camera operators? Who do you guys stay close to figure out how the scene's going to go?
Yes, all of them.
Well, it depends on your question, what you want to ask.
Yeah, it depends.
You know,
Yeah.
your operator can be like a real good buddy. You're always in, as somebody was saying earlier, try not to leave too much. And so if you're always there, the operator's usually always there, dolly grip's always there. If they're going to change something up in their move, it's good to know those things. The operator can always tell you, oh no, we're not on rehearsal, we had her over here, but now we're bringing her over here, whatever it is. Sometimes it depends on what answer you want as to whether you go to ask the first AD or the director about something. At least it does for me, because I'll just, you know, I'll say, hey, well, we would want to do it this way, right, director? You know, and then you get, then that's maybe what I'm angling at. You ask the first AD, well, we better ask the director. So, you know, it depends.
And sometimes
Depends on
the
your
first AD is the last person to know what's going on because they're busy dealing with logistics and, you know, the set's going on over here and they're worried about getting actors in and that sort of thing. So, you know, the DP may know what the shots are. The job we're working on now, the operator sets everything up and knows what the coverage is and what we're going to try to do next. So every job will be different with the primary person who will know what's going on. So you just, when you get there, you know, after a couple of days, you'll know who's got their hand on the steering wheel.
And to that point, what may be a big deal for one department is not going to be for us. Like, you know, production on The Walking Dead may say, this is a huge day. There's 300 zombies back there. There's no recorded dialogue. It's not a big day for us at all. But it could be a huge stunt day. It could be a huge day regarding props because they have 300 people in a big auditorium. And, you know, we have to be sensitive to that as well, you know, because one of these days it's a big scene for us because there's 9 people and they're all wearing bathing suits. And we need to get that, you know, coordination because that's a big scene for us.
I mean, I see, and everyone will say, I say 1/8 of a page with 5 actors is a kiss of death.
Yeah.
Where you think it's going to be nothing, you know, no that scripted dialogue. So it's just like having to be on set and just paying attention that all of a sudden, and you get to, you know the flow of the show and you get to know the director. It's like, oh, these guys are going to talk. You know, we got to wire them all and get ready because they're going to shoot wide and tight here. But
yeah, on that Melissa McCarthy movie I was telling you about, we would have half a page, 10 actors, and it would turn into like a 3-page
Ad-lib
cluster.
fest. Yeah.
And like they're literally all over the room. We can't even double boom. You know, we need like 5 guys in there on sticks just to handle it, and it just, yeah.
I think one of the really cool things that we do as sound people is we have to know a little bit of something about almost every department. Special effects, transpo, wardrobe, grips, electric, every single department. And I don't think there's any other departments that are like that. No other departments are like that. So people will come to me from other departments and ask me questions about the scene. Because I'm right there and I know a little bit about how we're going to light it or how they're going to cut light or what have you.
And that helps you communicate when you need something. So
Yeah.
if you,
Absolutely.
especially with the grips, I've found that they're rough around the edges. So if you go talk to them and you don't understand, you don't use their lingo, if you don't know what something's called,
Yeah.
they won't even give you the time of day. So, yeah, you have to
A
learn.
Basso
about-
block is a very useful tool. Grips.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, this is kind of a stupid question, but I mean, I worked with Daryl Hannah one day. What have you ever asked someone to speak up?
Oh.
Talk about the etiquette of that.
Well, that's a tiger.
Have I ever not asked someone to speak up?
Yeah.
I always found that actors that whisper don't know their lines. They're not prepared, so it'll drop their level at least 50%. But a lot of cases, you can, if you get friendly with the actor, you can actually, if you know them really well, ask them to, you know, bring it up, and they'll bring it up and help you. And there's other actors you would never ask that question because they don't want to bring it up. And so you would have to go to the director and try to work it out. And sometimes you win, sometimes you lose.
Or they'll tell on you.
Yeah.
Mike told me to speak
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
I've had directors cuss me out because I went to the actors first. So it's just a fine line of figuring out if you're cool with the actor, maybe just in some casual dialogue you mention to him, you know, speaking louder is good. Other times I go straight to the director and say, hey, I need more volume from this person on this line, and usually it never happens, but at least you
But you
pass
keep
for it.
trying.
That's
You
a
got that's
safe approach. Go to the
Also, if
director.
you have that relationship with the actors, you can also sometimes not tell them to speak up. You can sometimes just make them aware that they're not that you're not really hearing. You know, that for whatever reason you can word it as a particular, you know, a special way, but you can make them aware that you're not catching that one line, and then they'll say, "Oh, okay, so I'll speak up more." That way, it's their idea. If it's their idea,
Yeah, diplomacy and how you couch the request.
I use the word, this works really well. I use the word clarity. Can I get a little more clarity out of the line? Then they're like, oh, yeah, we can't quite understand that well, can we? And then that usually involves speaking up a little bit. And sometimes all we need is some clarity. I watched one of the Harry Potter movies last night. I understood about like 60% of what they were saying. Part of it is their lingo, their slang. But a lot of it is just flat out could not hear what they're saying. So clarity really works.
I also think it's the environment. Let's say if you're doing a bar scene and they're going to add a lot of music or hubbub over it, you got a way of getting an actor to speak up. You go to direct. You know, we're going to be adding all this music and hubbub in there, so we need to level up so you can add some of this later, and that always works. That helps you in your favor.
Yeah.
Because then the actor realizes, oh yeah, they're going to be playing music or something, so we'll speak up a little bit more so we can hear ourselves. So.
It
That's
usually
another
works
angle.
for about 2 or 3 takes, and
Yeah, and then they
start
drop it
because
off
they
the
get
wall.
self-conscious. I mean, you know, there are 2 people sitting at a bar with a bunch of extras around, and they're talking about the last time we got and they so oh boy, I don't want the last time we got laid.
Well, it's also really great when one of them takes it to heart and is like yelling while the other ones are kind of just talking like they're in bed with each other or something.
Yeah, and a funny thing also is the tighter the lens goes on them, the quieter they get.
They know. How do they know that?
It's like
I guess
seriously.
they know more about filmmaking than I give them credit for.
Yeah, probably right.
Hey guys, what's up? I'm Dusty. This may be kind of a broad kind of question, but as far as microphone placement, can you guys talk a little bit about like how you choose a microphone for a certain scene, and how much you converse about that with your mixer, and how you go about doing that in the most proper way?
It's knowing the mic, the pickup pattern, the lens size, what will best capture them. I've had some mixers that want me to use the same mic for every shot, which is fine. That's continuity of sound. I've worked with other mixers who've literally asked me to change the mic every shot. So we do the wide shot, we use the longest shotgun. Medium shot, we pull out a medium. It's always preference and understanding how you can get what you want to get.
There's not one particular right tool for the job, and working every mixer, and we've all worked with many different people, all have preferences, what they want to hear on the set, So, this is what I like to use on interiors, and this is what I like to use in exterior, and then every now and then you'll pull out the 816, but very
on the
rare.
walk and talks indoors. Going
Yeah,
indoors.
but it's just getting to know what the mixer likes to have, and if you're working with a bunch of different people, you'll realize no one has the same tools. So
Do you have a specific thing you're thinking of, or example that maybe we could speak to more?
I guess really more than anything, I was just thinking like specific things, and maybe you can even, share, certain microphones you guys really like, just for your personal opinion and personal use. And then also just what patterns you choose for certain scenarios, if you have lots of people in the scene, if which microphones would you select based on, the specifics of the scene? Or if you just have like a specific situation you've been in where you're like, man, I don't know if I have the right mic for this, and how you decided to like change to a different one or something like that.
I like the blue one.
The blue one is good.
With the nice lights.
It works great. The what is it? CMIT.
CMIT 5U.
It's just it's an
That's a great
incredible
mic.
piece of equipment.
Right. It's pretty warm, and it's like a Sheps. It's warm, but it's still got lots of pull. The thing is, though, it will you can have problems with it in reflective situations if you've got an empty desk that isn't covered, and you got windows behind, and you got concrete. Then you start to run into problems. And I get Duvetine or muslin or whatever the hell they'll let me put on the table that I can get away with. I carpet like crazy. Sometimes too much, I guess. Also some mixers will like a combination of mics, maybe that you've been using earlier in a scene, and they'll say, "Oh, well, yeah, but I don't like to use that when I've used the other one because they don't think it mixes as well." Then that's their call, of course. I typically, lately, I've been working with Chris Giles, and seemingly I'll go, "Which one sounds better?" And I'm going, "I like this one." He goes, "I like the other one." So there's your answer.
Yeah. Many times it's all dictated by what is in the package.
That too.
Your sound mixer many times he may not have the microphone that you like, or maybe he's got all the microphones. I worked with Paul Ledford from Louisiana. I did a couple of shows with him, and he really got specific about it to where at times we'd pull out a figure 8 pattern on a Sheps and use that when it's 2 people talking on a table. Yeah. And then they make another capsule. Do you remember? You guys remember that capsule that on the Sheps that doesn't have the back lobe on it? There's a capsule that
Omni?
we used to use it in car. No, it wasn't the Omni. It didn't have a back lobe, so we'd use it in cars. The 8.
8?
Yeah.
Used to use the 41 all the time.
He would love to use that in a car because it didn't pick up that sound bouncing around their feet. And it was great. But like nobody even does that anymore.
So now we use the Countryman B6 for everything.
Yeah.
Just hang it out there.
Best sounding microphone in the world, man.
Put it underwater, whatever.
But there's so many different answers to your question. That's why we're all kind of like, how deep do you want to go with this? Because they are all
Because we're all having
Every
different
situation,
Yeah.
yeah. It's like a golf bag, apparently.
I did a bathroom scene on Stranger Things season 1. It's the part where Nancy and Steve are in the women's bathroom. Anyways, it's a bathroom, and so it's one of the most reflective areas you can shoot in, and thankfully, sonically. Sorry. So thankfully, we were able to try 3 or 4 different mics in that room during rehearsals, and so we eventually settled on, I think, the DPA 40.
18 is what I would guess.
18, yeah. Which is very wide pattern, and it sounded like a bathroom.
I want to say one more thing before you ask your question too, because we haven't discussed this. Nowadays, it is truly amazing what they can do in post to make all of these microphones sound the same. I don't know how they do it. I'd like to spend some time there. But I've been watching shows that I've worked on recently, and it's incredible how they can make a radio mic, sound like an open microphone.
So signal and the noise is really the main thing.
Yeah.
The original thing you start with anyway, that it winds up being the thing that's the most important.
Yeah, what the technology is called microphone modeling. Most people from the music industry are very familiar with that. Basically, plugins at this point. Exactly.
Well, somebody mentioned that you might your mixer might not have your favorite mic in the pack. Do you guys carry your own mic packs?
No.
No, none of you.
Too expensive.
Too expensive.
We don't get enough equipment rental.
Yeah,
to,
you won't get a rental for that.
To carry a microphone, I wouldn't.
But I mean, I carry all kinds of tools with me when I go to do a job. I don't use them all, but
Well, that's,
you know,
I mean, the mixer is getting paid
Yeah.
for that purpose.
Which you are. You're kind of a mixer, right?
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
doing these.
Well, yeah.
So,
Okay.
yeah, if they're not going to rent it from me, I'm not going to let them use it.
Right. I mean, but I've shown up to gigs where I've got to do an entire band with all 57s, and it was nice that I had
It's a
my
great
little
mic.
it's nice that I had my little bullet box in with my drum kit, my drum kit pack,
Yeah.
and made my job easier because I don't have to work nearly as hard to get it to sound like sound the way I want it to sound. I just didn't know if you guys carried your own mics at all.
I'd say take everything that makes you comfortable. Anything you think you might need, bring it all. And if you're willing to let them use it,
Yeah.
because you're right, like you say, it makes your job easier.
Well, it makes my
Yeah.
hey, he did great.
Right.
Everything sounds awesome.
Right.
So okay, I'm gonna get the call back.
Was this a one-man band thing? Were you the only guy there?
I'm
or did
always
you have
the
a team?
only guy.
Okay, so.
But
I mean,
I'm the guy.
But also, it also goes on with your relationship with the sound mixer. He has his preference in things. But if I've been working with somebody for a lot of years, and maybe I have accumulated a couple of things, and maybe I could bring it on, just because maybe he didn't have a second one of those microphones, or have it, let's try it type of situation.
That was actually one of the points I was going to make on that. I may be kind of weird in the sense that I have a lot of gear that I play with on the side. And one of the things I'll do if I look at a script and I say, I think we're going to need to bring out this mic because of what it offers. It could be like a wider cardioid pattern. It could be more of a small plant or something like that. And I think that we might need it. I'll go ahead and let the mixer include that on their insurance, on their package. I'll say, can you add this to your package? That way it's covered by insurance by production. And I'll sometimes do that, and then I'll just kind of donate it, I guess you could say, simply because I know that for my own ear and for my own stress levels on set or whatever, I want to have that mic there to play. And so I'll sometimes do that. On some shows, they're actually getting more stingy with scripts this day and age. You're right. That's an interesting point. On Stranger Things Season 2, they said no one's allowed to get scripts. And, of course, they allowed one of the makeup girls to have a script, and she left it on set one day and just about made the UPM freak out. And we're like, so, wait a minute. The makeup girl has a script that she's just got a paper script? That's interesting.
How do you decide? Yeah.
Yeah, they wouldn't give it to sound.
Yeah, so one thing we've touched on right before you question is a lot of the answers have been centered around different microphones or patterns in different environments, and a couple of people have asked questions on that. One thing, as far as a new person, a lot of the names of the microphones, blah blah blah, of choices that you'll hear, the different patterns. Go back a step further and understand why those patterns sound the way they do in the environment. Once you can gain the fundamentals of why something is doing what it's doing, then you can adapt that to any microphone. So you would understand the reason that they're all saying, which they all know, the reason that the wider pattern sounds better in a reflective room is because more of the reflections are actually on axis. When the reverberation in a room is caught off axis, it sounds more distant. So the hollower the sound. Those type of theories can be applied to any of the microphones or anything that anyone's talking about. So always kind of go back a step and not really think about the brand or the specific thing, but think about the theory of why. And once you understand why, just like with reverbs or delays or anything like that in the music world, once you understand why a gate or why attack and release is being used the way it is on a signal, then you can apply that to any scenario. And it doesn't have to be, well, I like this particular product over this. It's an understanding of why, what it's actually doing.
As an equipment, how many people own their own booms?
Sticks?
Yeah. I always show up to work with people, thirds who don't own sticks or anything like that. I always equate it to a chef showing up without knives.
Yeah, you never know what you're going to get if you're coming on as a third, or if you don't have your own stuff and the mixer has an old beat up boom pole. It's like using someone else's toothbrush. Yeah.
And to that point there, mixers will get their utilities to maintain everything, but usually not the booms. because the booms are going to be the boom operator's responsibility. And when was the last time a boom operator with that mixer used their boom pole? Could have been a while.
Yeah.
So I mean, I maintain all my own gear because I know that if it starts to sound a little weird, why is that? Oh, it's because there's a kink in the cable. I need to recable it, whatever the case may be. I'll know my own gear really well. But but if I have to grab a mixer's boom, it's, you know.
No, yeah, it's totally. I agree with that face because that's, yeah, my K-Tech pole. You know, it creaks a little bit. I know how it creaks, and then I'll hear a creak. I'm going, wait, what's that? It's like what's a weird creak? You know, because yeah, I know exactly how I can lean into something. You know, lately I've been using one of the mixer's poles, but I love my K-Tech's like 23 years
I have
old.
another question about. We all started with 1,000-foot mags, 11 minutes max. We would never shoot that because it was too expensive to develop.
Mm-hmm.
What do you guys do now with 47-minute mags?
You hope to God that you don't
Yeah.
have to do it.
Right.
I've been stuck in
I've only had to do
comedy
31-minute
lately.
takes on my current show. That's
You're on
been
Tyler
doing-
Perry,
none
aren't
of
you?
it's 47-minute.
No?
I'm from LA.
Oh, okay.
I'm
I was gonna say, if you tell me that, then I'm gonna say, oh, you're Tyler Perry. If you're
No, I've been stuck in comedy, and we go through 47-minute takes all the
But
time.
don't they have to reset to the top occasionally? Or
They
do they
just
just keep like go
find
from
the
here,
funny.
go from here, go back,
Go
you know,
find the
just
funny.
get bits.
I heard rumor there was talk about limiting mag card size for us and operators, but
That was a few years ago, but nothing ever happened, I think.
I always think it's a good idea if you're not going to be mobile on the set to use a ladder or an apple box to save your arms on these situations where I was in a case where they had this guy ad-libbing for 20 minutes straight and you have to lock off, and that's the worst thing to do is lock off somewhere. So you need to get your height up and save your arms as much as possible. So guys in New York used to always, this one boom guy, Todd Maitland, always used as many ladders as possible and then had multiple apple boxes to save himself. And it was a good trick to do. So if you're not going to be dancing around, that's what I recommend on all the shots to save your arms for the course of the day.
You can also get a camera monopod that'll extend to about 6 feet. Take the fluid head camera junk off the top and refit it with a little rest.
Roller.
And so you can use that as your fulcrum, and then you just have to control it if you're not moving around.
Right.
You know, if you're locked off in something, you can just. But if you have to move around very much, it's kind of cumbersome.
I mean, I've always thought about, like, man, what am I gonna do? I'm dying out here. We're in minute 12 of a scene, and it's just, I mean, if you can't do it, you know, and you start getting tired, you know, it's gonna affect you being able to swing. It's just like, I thought, screw it, I'll just bust a shot, you know, just bust a shot. And sometimes you can be you know, very blatant about it and just drop the mic right in, or you could just start booming into the shot, you know, and people will see that microphone swinging around. But I mean, it's meant. I haven't done it, but that's what I would probably do.
Well, I mean, if it's a steady cam shot, something like that, then the operator is going to be the limiting factor.
Yeah. And if you're standing still in one spot, that really makes it hard. So, you know, if it's a scene where you can move around a little bit, you're shifting your weight around, you could save your arms a little bit. I mean, we've all had to, you know, rest the pole on your head for a second just to get the blood to come back down in your arm. But I've thought about those.
It's really good for your neck. You know, you put the pole on your head and hold it.
Your chiropractor likes that.
Loves
You
that.
make a lot of visits.
Yeah.
I've conveniently had technical problems.
Yeah, that's a good one too.
They don't usually argue with that. They'll go, well, what's the problem? And you,
technical.
No,
it's a sound thing. Don't worry about it.
They also don't usually argue if you have an understanding maybe up front that, look, if it's, you know, it's too much, I'm going to cut. I mean, mixers have told me that before. If you're out there for whatever, however many minutes, and you've got to cut, then just say cut.
Yeah.
On that note, real quick, remember where you are right now. We're going to take a real quick break. We're about halfway through the panel. So let's go ahead and take a quick 5-minute bathroom break. And
I got no.
Speaking of getting your blood flowing again, walk around, that kind of thing. Okay, so thanks for not leaving. And we're going to go for about another hour. Hopefully that'll take us about maybe 15 minutes over. We got a little backed up with everybody going over to the other Union Hall. But thanks for staying with us here. So, Eric, why don't you start us off?
Yeah, I have a general question for the panel. I'd like the panel to contrast their approach to boom operating in the film era versus our new digital era?
More wasteful. I would say it's more wasteful because, for instance, it used to cost something to run a piece of film through a camera and process it. Same thing with tape. It costs something, and now you just blow through ones and zeros like they're non-existent, which I guess they really are if you're not retrieving them. So some directors, they just turn on a camera and let it run, and there's no respect for, I guess, the process or the medium. I'm not sure which way it goes, but it's kind of wasteful, I think. You know, they waste a lot of people's energy and time because they're not focused. I just flip it on. Okay, kind of hurt everybody, and hey, we're rolling still after 10 minutes. You know, it just seems like it's a little more wasteful in terms of everybody's effort to a certain extent.
You'll hear, oh, just shoot the rehearsal, it's free, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, but it's not only, you know, affect us, you know, it's the dolly grip, the focus puller, you know, those things, it's you know.
Freedom isn't free.
Yeah, so.
Or the phrase they say, we could get lucky on this.
Yeah, we get that. I was going to get lucky.
Yeah.
Let's just do one more.
Yeah. To me, digital, which I love as far as a format itself, but digital in the film industry to me has allowed and I think in for reference to your question, has allowed the dumbing down of job positions in higher levels. DPs and camera operators and directors had to know what they were doing, or they'd get shut down by the studio because they're wasting money and time. That is almost irrelevant at this point, which allows the actual amount of media that they need to get done. So it's kind of like a blind eye. Dumbing down of the industry. That would be the key, I think.
They used to use light meters. Remember that?
Yeah, correct.
Damnedest thing. I worked on the remake of Lolita years ago, and the DP got fired after the first week because all the film came out dark. You know, that never happens in today's world.
I did a movie beginning of the year, I, Tonya, the Tonya Harding story, and they shot that on film, but they shot it like they're using digital cameras. And they ran through their film budget the first quarter of the movie. And Margot Robbie had to go back to her production company and basically pitch why they need more money to finish the movie. So they did. It'll be coming out soon. Looks pretty good.
Do they have any theaters they can show it on?
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't know if they have distribution yet. Oh, you mean as film?
Digital format.
To project it.
Oh, I don't know.
I always find that nowadays these waste so much time in these ridiculous masters that they're never going to use nothing more than the beginning and the end. And because it's digital now, they'll do like 10, 15 takes of the shitty master that it's not even to be used.
With coverage.
With coverage, and waste your time and everybody's time. And then once you get the coverage, then there's no time to do the coverage because they wasted all the hours doing the stupid master.
Yeah.
And that's really a downfall to the business.
But as far as an approach to booming, you're still, I think that your approach to booming doesn't change as far as any of that goes. It's how the rest of the company works and or maybe overworks, you know, shooting all that.
I think
shooting all that stuff.
Roll rehearsal.
Yeah, that is certainly, yeah, right.
Just makes it more important to be on set all the time. But
take one's a rehearsal. That's what I said. Yeah. I guess like my mom. I'm gonna get a shirt made like that because, you know, that's the last 3 or 4 shows that I've worked on now is like, take one's a rehearsal.
Yeah, especially
you know, we
for
work
the boom
everything
operator
out.
and the focus puller. That's their rehearsal
Yeah.
practice. And you can look at the focus puller and he's looking right back at you. He says he doesn't have any idea what's gonna happen.
And
so
those
it's
are
a
the
waste
2
of
most
time.
difficult jobs on a set, right there.
I mean,
critical
focus
jobs.
puller is the most difficult job. And what do you think?
Yes, it is.
Do you think the boom guy is the second most difficult? Might be.
Especially this day and age where it's all dynamic, where, to your points, people don't hit marks, they don't deliver the lines the same way, don't even bother remembering the dialogue. So you have to use the force in knowing who's going to speak next and to get the microphone there in time. It's very much something you have to be very on your game about. if you start to lag in the brain at the 16th hour, get that caffeine going because you got to keep going because now it's even crazier than it was at the beginning of the day. You have to be more on your game then. Yeah.
MGM in the morning, EPK at night.
Yeah. Or as we say here in the South, Gone with the Wind in the morning or Dukes of Hazzard at night.
Yeah. A very specific difference in the formats, digital allowing the DP to sit back at his cart and light the shot. The camera operator is better able to see the detail of his shots. The first AC has a $5,000 monitor in his hand, and so now he knows instantaneously that he's out of focus, and he can quickly make that adjustment. Now that transition may not work for the cut, but many times it works for the cut, because we're looking at pieces here that we're trying to grab. So I see far less us having to redo takes because the first AC didn't have it in focus. A third thing for the boom operator is that digital is also much more defined and specific, therefore you can see shadows and reflections a lot easier than you could on film, especially 16 millimeter film.
And you can't hide things in the frame like you used to in the grain
I
of
live
film.
for hiding
It's a lot harder to hide a shadow.
And that's an interesting point. How many people here have gone back and watched like Raiders of the Lost Ark when it went back to theaters and that kind of thing? Sometimes you go back and watch those old movies, or the older movies, I should say. They're not really old, but you go back and you watch them and you're like, how could they not realize that was out of focus? Or did I see what I just think I saw? Or, there's a lot of that you catch now because screens back then were not nearly as big as the IMAX screens we show Marvel movies on this day and age. It's crazy. I mean, the experience was totally different back then.
I think the digital thing, it makes, like on Stranger Things, we used to get the booms in the master, and they can just easily wipe them out. It's a lot easier to do that, so I think that's kind of given us an advantage.
Yeah, you mean a master that's static and isn't moving? Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, because they can just shoot the plate and then. Yeah, no, that's fantastic that you can do that.
Yeah.
So you guys were talking about arms before we left. What about your back? What do you do to save your back on set? Do you anything like insoles, brace, anything like that?
I'd suggest getting a good pharmacist.
I go to the when I want to show, I pretty much go to the chiropractor every week. I probably go maybe every month if I'm not working, but I just like to stay tuned up, and I get a massage every other week unless I have to have one, like I'm going to go to one in a little while today. I use a bunch of, I don't have a patch on, but a lot of times I have these herbal patches that I put on my traps, my rhomboids, my lower back. I stay self-medicated that way.
Do core strength. If you can, in your head, mentally think about not using the muscles in your arms, but centering the weight into the center of your body. If you have any kind of martial arts background, it'll become simpler to you. But you can definitely study it from, say, like a yoga perspective. Everything that you're doing can be counterbalanced by balancing your body. And if you can learn to center weight into your core, you can basically hold your hands open and boom about anything.
I mean, I use a Hodges weight on the end of my pole, on the back end.
That's
and
the K-Tech.
That K-Tech has, and I mean, for years I've had it. They took it away. They just brought it back last year, but it's a heavier pole, but it helps you balance out better. Just instead of having all like, this is my strong arm, which I've dislocated before and had surgery. So, but it helps balance overall. It doesn't. You don't feel it above your head. If you're walking around and grab a pole that doesn't have one on there, you're like, whoa. It's very different. But it's something to try. If you're having problems.
Do y'all know what a Hodges weight is?
It's just a
It's
counterbalance.
the counterweight on the other end of the pole.
It's 80 gram counterbalance basically. It goes on the right end of the pole. So many this day and age, we put transmitters and stuff on the wrong end of the pole, which makes it even more front heavy. But that's a counter.
Yeah, it helps. Like on the show I'm doing now, we have the transmitter at the head of the mic and near the head. It just, helps balance better.
And it also keeps people away from you from behind because
If you
they're
don't
only
like
going to
people,
get smacked
you
once
smack
you're
them
that
hard,
way.
they'll learn
Yeah,
that
the
they
prop
give you
guy
some
that runs
space.
in at the end of every take.
Yeah, that's a fun thing too. Is when you're fully extended and people
Oh,
are
yeah.
trying to run in to
Oh,
reset
yeah.
the set.
Excuse me. And I'm like, there's no excuse me on 16 feet out. You got to pull a little bit of an in before you start hitting actors in the head again.
Say cut, everybody runs the set.
Yep.
When you guys first started, what did you guys do in order to hone your skills? And like, what was your opportunities like at the time as far as practice and you know, were you guys able to shadow, you know, and learn the proper way? You know what I'm saying?
I'll start with that. And we were just talking about it with Pritchard about, I started my career in Miami. So a lot of, you know, the film base for sound, there wasn't a lot of mixers that would do big features. They'd always bring in a sound mixer and a boom operator. And, you know, I started as a utility. So I had the opportunity to work with a lot of different people coming into town. And like I say, there's not one right way of doing anything, you know, it's just, you know, like I say, it's an art. But, you know, I was a utility guy for 7 or 8 years before I stepped up to boom. So, and just getting that practice and maybe being on a show where, you know, they're a little more easier going with, you know, people with lesser experience. So, I mean, that's, if you can get on stuff like that, that's where you get to practice, you know, and just ask lots of questions.
So how do you get more second boom experience if you are a utility?
That's
Well, I mean, you know, that's a great place as a utility person. Like, if I could put a second boom in a scene, I would definitely do it. You know, practicing and just getting in there. Some mixers don't care about off camera, but some do. I like having off camera there, and it's great.
the editors
great
care about it.
practice. Yeah, the editors love it. So, but
I think that ultimately a boom operator's working, I always consider myself working for essentially 2 people, the editor and the actor. I mean, I'm working for a mixer and I'm staying out of everybody else's shot, but ultimately the editor cares about my tracks and the actor is not in a booth somewhere doing ADR. And those are the people to be honest, I try to, that's who I think of down the line as far as what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, I think being a utility is key to really learning how to be a boom op, because that gets you on set, that gets you around what's going on, and it gives you moments to second boom and learn from that boom op. My primary instructor or boom operator that I worked for, his name was Chris Main. He was from Charleston, and he was like almost like a drill sergeant when it came down to how to boom. And so I learned his specific method, and it's very rigid, and I'm glad I did. I don't necessarily boom like that anymore, but just being in that role as a utility and being able to watch and see how he handled set, I think really set me up well, you know, rather than, I know some people just go into booming and, you know, that's that, but I think having that experience as a utility is really helpful when you want to get into booming.
You get a chance to work with different boom operators and see different styles and what works, what doesn't, that kind of thing, versus stepping right into it and saying, let's figure this thing out. Remember how often you see multiple boom operators on the same set?
Also, I think you can study a boom operator like you can study anything that has little nuances and stuff. So I think that I know that I've seen people. When I've gone to sets and seen, I used to watch Earl Sampson booming. You know, that guy was just he would do these little things. He would just move tiny bits, and that's what I feel I do now. But I used to study everything that he would do, and I think that you can learn a lot from watching whoever it is that's good that you're working with now.
Yeah, if you have an opportunity to be on the set with the boom operator and just ask questions and see what they're doing.
Yeah,
I mean,
literally just watching them and the actor and the pull in between. That's
I
good.
think there's nothing more important than the utility. Instead of sitting next to the mixer, once in a while getting up on set and watching that boom operator, what he's doing, how he handles the rapport with the people on the set, how he handles the shot, asking as many questions as you want. I've never turned down a question from anybody over the years because I did the same thing when I started out. But I was fortunate enough to have like the top boom operators in New York train me, and I was a utility for 8 to 10 years before I even stepped up to saying I could do a feature on my own. And I also, if you know the boom operator, say, you know, let's do some more second booming. You know, recommend to him that, hey, I'm available. Let me cover off camera, or let me, take a person off to the side that's fixed that I can handle, and the more experience you hold that pole, it's like anything else. You'll feel more comfortable. You'll know the set etiquette, and then just start. Before you know it, you walk onto a set, you know exactly what to do without even asking any questions. It just becomes second nature. So it just takes experience.
I was gonna say, the utility job is so different now than what it used to be. I mean, we talked earlier today about, it's like, when was the last time we had to wire somebody? That's the utility kind of does that all the time. I mean, I've taken jobs over the last few years as a utility for a few weeks, and it's good practice to get back into it because, God forbid your utility gets sick and, you have a new guy coming in, you're going to have to go back and start wiring these actors. But just get on that set and ask the questions. It's really, really important. And
There's 100 ways to do everything, and they're all right. That's as long as you get the goods.
Yeah. You learn the best from each guy that you work with, and you pick up his good trait that you want to use for yourself, and just grow on.
Or
it.
you learn what not to do.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It goes both ways.
But I'll say one thing: utility people in Atlanta work so hard, as far as I'm concerned, that I don't know that you'll have that much time to watch a boom guy, but it's really important. I a couple times and these are people that I've worked with, and I thought, the mixer's already told this person, just go watch Kurt, see what's happening, just keep an eye on him. But it's then he looks over and it's this. So,
And to Mike's point there, real quick, if you are wanting to be a boom op and you mention to the boom operator, it's one thing to stand around on set. You'll probably be asked to leave at some point. But if you have a job there, so if you say, hey, I'm looking to be a boom op, I'd love to watch you work. And you say, well, let me invite you to set. That's not really necessarily going to be the right way on every show, at least. Give them a boom, put it in their hand, and give them a task. If they have a boom in their hand, they're working. No one's going to question it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Also, keep in mind, as a utility, what do you want to do? Do you find that you want to be a mixer next? Because a lot of utilities I've talked to seem to want to transition straight into being a mixer without going to boom operator, especially in the recent years. So if that's the case, do you want to be on set all the time with the boom in your hand, or do you just want to pop in on set? I mean, yes, it's good to know. You definitely need to know what a boom operator does. But what is it that you're wanting to do? Are you wanting to transition straight to mixer? In that case, drill your mixer constantly about questions there and know what your boom operator does whenever you're on set doing second boom. But if you want to be a boom operator especially, get on set as much as you can and watch that process.
I think another good thing with boom operators, like say, the utilities are much busier now wiring actors, and if you need that second boom on there, just being able to have that boom operator, the main guy, protect that utility's position where you need them to be. There's some great utilities that are boom operators too, that come out there and they can just walk right on the set and know exactly where to be and not worry about lighting or you need a flag here. I try to protect that for the utility person because they are busier than they have been in the past. So
I think. You and I are
Go
like
ahead,
quiet.
Max.
Go ahead. I've been trying to remain quiet. One of the best parts about being a boom operator, and if you're in this room, you're certainly considering it, is leadership. When I started out, I was producer and director in television. I was a leader. I had to do everything: writing, directing, editing, voiceovers, camera work sometimes, the whole bit. When I got into the film business, I wanted to be a leader. When the sound mixer asked me to be a boom operator, I got excited because I was like, wow, I'm going to be up front. I remember asking him, oh, am I going to get to run along backwards and mic people as they're walking and talking? I was really excited about that. He said, oh, yeah, you're going to get to do that and a lot more. One of the best parts. Oh, and I started out as a boom guy. Also, I was pretty athletic because I played basketball, football, golf. I ran track. I did everything as a kid. So I came into it being very agile. That all fit in with the leadership and being a boom operator also. I also got the opportunity to work with some of the best. I spent like 5 years working with Don Sufel, who's a legendary boom operator, and he taught me a lot of the nuances of booming as well. So that was pretty awesome. But more than anything else, it's the leadership role that we get to do. we're one of the top leaders on set in many regards. We're not necessarily given that credit as a sound boom operator, but it holds true. And I do my absolute best to uphold that, to stand up there and not get pushed around, not just forgotten. I try to stand up. We talked earlier about holding a pole forever and how do you stop that? Well, that's a challenge. But sometimes if we're not getting what we aren't getting or need to get, I'll just say, hold on, and I'll say it with a big, bold voice. And I don't know if I recommend it, but sometimes I can be a little bit of a bastard, and just hold on a second. We need to fix something. And I look at it as a leadership role. I look at it as the sound mixer needs me to do that, the movie needs me to do that. And for those people who like leadership, it's a great position. That's why Don Sufel has been a boom operator all these years. He didn't want to mix. He wanted to be a leader. He wanted to be the one out there on set working with the top guys, making the decisions as to which microphones were going to be used and what position we were going to put those mics in. That is the best part about what we do. Leadership. Did I lean in far enough?
Yeah, you're
Testing,
fine.
1,
You're
2,
on mic
3,
now.
4. Ladies and gentlemen, live.
Real quick, but right before your question, we're talking about things that you can do to save your bodies. One thing that I was going to mention, footwear. Making sure that you have comfortable shoes that you can stand in all day long is critical, at least for me. Occasionally, I'll get a pair of shoes that will drive me nuts, and my feet are killing me after a few hours. But you have to have good footwear that's going to last you all day long. And if you have good footwear, it's going to really help you a lot. I'm sorry, go ahead with your question.
Some boom operators change their shoes, though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yep.
New show, new shoes. I buy one new pair of
I was
pair of
in
shoes
the
a day, switch 'em out at
ether.
lunch.
Did you mention insoles?
I did not, because
Okay.
recently I had a bad experience with them and they messed me up. So
They
I wasn't
saved
going
my
to.
life.
If it's your thing, by all means.
I went to a podiatrist. Everybody said, get custom insoles, and I went and did that and spent the money. And fortunately, I have great insurance and it covered most all of it. They were the most painful damn things I've ever put under my feet in the world. My girlfriend, who's an ER nurse, she said, you should go get Power Step. Just get Power Step. They're like 25, as much as like $40. I now own about 6 pair of Power Step insoles. Absolute best choice I've ever made in terms of working on a movie set all day.
All right. Well, I think I got to remember my question. I think it's a 3-part. It still has to do with what Alan was just talking about, saving your bodies. The first question was, as a boom op, I know you guys suffer fatigue and you have the boom up and you still got to hold it up for the dialogue and your shoulder shakes. What's the right hand position to move so you can skirt that slight vibration on the boom pole? And
one
the
that
next
makes the least amount of noise.
Yeah,
But
yeah. The next question was, I forgot. Dang, conversation so long. Well, what exercises can you do outside of holding a boom pole to strengthen or to extend your shoulders to hold a boom pole longer? Endurance training for your shoulders and keep those joints and things in your shoulders from aching as soon or weakening sooner.
Well, as was mentioned, core.
Yeah.
Do your core stuff. I mean, I do a yoga routine with 5 positions.
Mhm.
You can certainly do more. I go to yoga class once in a while. It's good to stay stretched out too.
Yeah.
It's not about bulk or whatever.
Yeah, I think weightlifting's not as important as when you're holding your arms up, you're losing blood flow out of your arms. So you got to use tricks where you get your one arm down and start going with your fingers like that, trying to force the blood back down to your fist. And moving the pole around, even subtly, helps you because now the blood flow's changing. If you're
Shifting
locked
the weight.
off, that blood just going right out of your arm, and then you're going to start feeling that shooting pain. So whatever tricks you can do to get that your back arm down or whatever hand down to get that feeling back, that's you got to kind of work it into the shot. You know where the dead spaces are in the scene.
Right. Every now and then I go into like physical therapy because my shoulder will get sore from time to time. And one of the neat exercises I saw was it's this it's a post that's about this long and it flexes. And so you hold it out at 90 degrees and you're just doing this with that. And you do it for 30 seconds and then put it down for 10 seconds and then you go up to a minute, it's just like a little rotation. But the one thing that Max and I have is we're tall. So we don't have to hold our arms up all the way as some other people do. So, I could lock my arms off like this and always shift, and some other people have to boom like this the whole time. It's tough.
Hence standing on the apple box.
Yeah, standing on the apple box. And,
yeah.
Or
sitting on the apple box.
Or if you don't get on an apple box and you are shorter, you can extend the pole out even farther, get a little bit farther back, and then you could bring it you can bring it lower, because by then the pole's going to arch up. So it's not just necessarily having the pole out as short as possible. Sometimes it's actually easier to have it longer. To I think Todd's point over there, that he has the pole out a lot, and that's a very important thing as well.
And I think we all have like comfort points of how we like to hold our pole. Like I'm probably like to work, around 12 feet up to, my pole goes 19 and a half feet. So, but my comfort zone is around 12 feet.
You might explore also getting a physical therapist that, and tell them what you do, because you're going to have some things happen, and they can give you exercises and stuff that you can work specifically on whatever minor injuries, because it'll continue, because you're going to continue to do this repetitive motion. And as my experience quotient increases, that's code for I'm getting older. I came across this guy, Steve Maxwell. Look him up. The Only Workout You'll Ever Need. It's a pretty good low impact sort of thing that you can do real quick. And it's like, really? That simple? And the core. It helps with your core. So, check some of his stuff out. It's very amazingly simple, and, it's kind of yoga-ish, and yet you're not lifting weights. Right. It's working with your body weight and your core strength. It's simple. You don't need anything. You don't have to go to the gym. Check him out, Steve Maxwell. I get no rebates. So
yeah, and holding a boom is not a natural motion. So the more you do it, the things are going to go wrong. And don't be a hero and just press through the pain, because the pain's there for a reason. We've all had injuries and had surgeries and hernias and all kinds of stuff just for being a tough guy, being young. That kind of makes a difference. You get older, you get smarter, or you get lazier. I'm not sure, but the thing is
Weaker.
Yes. So you find ways to cheat, and you're not going to go the extra mile. I'm not going to run across the field with a boom with the jogger and the guy. It's not going to happen, because it's uneven ground and I'm not looking, and the mixer wants me to run. It's not going to happen. So, because you're just setting yourself up for failure and injury, and then you're out of money, then you're out of work.
Yeah. I don't know if I've met a boom up or worked with a boom up that doesn't experience fatigue or pain.
I don't.
So. Freddie, everybody.
There he is. Nice to meet you. Have you met Freddie Chancellor here?
Yeah, I've never had any injuries. I can last 20, 30 minutes on a shot. Did it on Tyler Perry with people in the audience. To me, it's about technique of center of balance and not using arm strength. I don't have any arm strength. I've actually been on dialysis before where this vein is just totally ripped up. To me, I guess it stems from which anyone can do. For me, as a young kid, I did a lot of what's called Kali, which is a martial art that involves two different sticks. One is 6 feet, and one is 4 feet, a jo and a bo. In that training, you learn the weight of this thing is pretty much irrelevant. It's how you center the weight to your core, and you don't use your strength of your arms. When you tighten your muscles, that's where all the issues come in. That's where the fatigue comes in. That's where the injuries come in. When you actually do this, if you actually see yourself on a pole and you're grabbing it, that's where the problem comes in. You should be able to just push down on the back, push up on the front, and center it. And then you're just not using your arms or your shoulders or anything. It's an art to do that. I've trained a lot of people to do that, but that's where it comes from. But you have like stupid muscles. Like you could lift way more weight than me. You know what I'm saying? It's just a technique. as people get older, you figure out, well, crap, I can't do that. I got to shift or do something else. And usually you kind of get to those type of concepts. But grasping the concept of not using your arm muscle is probably the smartest thing. Stay loose and limber through the movement or through whatever you're doing. And that to me applies to anything, because I have a huge skating background. I do longboard, slalom racing between cones at a high speed. It's all about core strength. So strengthening the core to me is just like game winner.
It's good stuff.
Yeah.
While we're on this technique topic, something I've run into recently, and no one's ever mentioned wrists as far as holding a pole goes. Now, it could just be a technique thing for me, but if I have my lead arm out like this, I like to rest the pole right here in this meat, and then my wrist naturally turns back like this if it's fully extended. So is there something you guys do to help prevent like tweaks like this? Because my wrist gets pretty sore by the end of a Friday.
Yeah, so that, to me right there, what you're doing is totally bad and like
Yeah,
a
I
lot
know.
of different.
I don't want to do
Yeah.
it that way.
I
either.
just, yeah.
Like,
Not through your fingers like that. You got to use the palm of your hand. Do what your waist and strength.
That's closer. There you
that's
go.
closer to that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then your backhand, just open up the fist and push down with the palm. Same concept as the other hand. Yeah, but your wrist, your whole arm and all is being tight.
Okay.
No, it's just
That-
getting
that
that
was
to
being
where you
loose. Force it
be
back on
loose.
You can also rest your hand on the back of the pole.
That's correct. Yeah,
just
it's basically like it's like
lean
if-
on it instead.
Yes.
Of, yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
Your back arm's just a counterbalance for the keeping the pole
Right.
straight out.
Right.
That's all it's doing.
That's all it's
the
doing.
front is doing all the work.
Yes.
You're just pushing this arm down.
Yeah, it's just my lead arm with the wrist and not positioning that
Well,
properly.
maybe you should get a wristband or something to tighten up your wrist to help you out a little bit.
Yeah, I've done that before because I get ganglion cyst in my wrist joints, and you can't bend it backwards when you have one of those
Right,
cysts.
exactly.
So what you do is you have a drink and you take a hammer.
It's called a Bible lump, and they used to hit it with the heaviest book around when it used to be a Bible. Wow, goes away. You know, it's a little voodoo and it's a little medical stuff. you know.
Best of both worlds.
It's magic. It's like RF. It's magic.
That's some stuff they don't teach the young generation people, that.
You want this back, Alan?
Maybe.
That's yours now.
That's the door prize, right?
Yeah, that's
Complimentary.
Yeah, you asked the question, you get to take it home.
Dr. Rhino uses a PDR.
Well, that'll work.
Hey guys, John Harton, for those who don't know me. So I wanted to go back a little bit to what Max was talking about leadership. So I've been a utility here in town for a couple of years now, and I've actually gotten, I've been fortunate enough to work with several of you. And in terms of leadership, how much should the utility be putting themselves out there? Obviously we're all in this together. We want to be a part of a team as a sound department, and we want to do the best job we can. How much should we be putting ourselves out there in terms of, getting what we need on set? Should we be deferring to the boom operators and the mixers, or, making our voices as utilities known? Does that make sense?
Yeah. My quick answer to that is, so you want it in relationship to you, the utility person.
Yes.
I suspect you already do it. I know how you work. You're great at what you do. John's one of the best in town. Really smart guy. Your leadership comes into play with wardrobe, with prop department, with those people that you interact with directly. You need their help. So your goal is to figure out the best way to employ those people such that you don't have to write an article like Cujo did on Facebook. Which I won't go into explaining all of that. Thank you, Cujo. You kind of put it out there, but your role is to do what Cujo's talking about and have those relationships and communications. And Dennis Sanborn with The Walking Dead is probably the best I've ever worked with at that. He has gotten everybody on board. It took him about a year and a half, but he does an incredible job of communicating and getting those people to work with him to achieve what he needs to achieve at the highest level. He's excellent at it. Sorry, I didn't lean forward.
I think when I was a utility, I found that I'd let the boom op run the set, and if he needed something from me, he would communicate that to me. But I also got to the point where I knew enough about what his role was, and so that would tell me what I would need to do. And then working with the mixer, I think it's and it depends on the whole team, but I found that I had a lot of flexibility as far as being able to take a leadership position and communicating with wardrobe, communicating with the ADs if something's too noisy, getting that shut off, or going into a set ahead of time and finding out where all the noisemakers are and working at getting that stuff off. I think it's different from team to team, but I think any leadership you take, just do it, and I think you'll find out how that works with your team as long as it's done I think it can be done in a respectful manner, and I know you, and you're not a jerk. So I think any steps you take to make the sound better, make your core workers' job easier, I think will be welcomed, and I think we can all be leaders in everything we do.
You just take the attitude with you that you're there trying to help your department. Every team's different. Like our department, everybody's, if you hear something, go take care of it as diplomatically as you can. If it becomes a real problem and somebody's giving you some blowback on it, pass it up the chain. Pass it up the chain to your boom operator, your department head, and just, but diplomatic is the best approach.
Yeah, you got to be respectful of their job, so that you can expect that in return. Everybody's got a job to do on the set, and you care about sound, but ultimately, by caring about sound, you care about the overall product at the end of the day, and that's what everybody else is there as well to do. So.
You also better filter out what your mixers say.
Yes, because mixers say some quite awful
Unbelievable
things.
things.
But being a boom man, you're the front man. I mean, this is what everybody has to deal with every day. They have to deal with the boom guy because the mixer's back there. I call it rear echelon wisdom, telling you what you can do. You do this, come down, go over here. No, that doesn't work. Because if I come down there, somebody have a shadow. You don't see that back there because you're back there, having a yogurt, and and you won't get out of your chair because there's a fear you may fall down. And I love mixers.
Or writing Facebook posts.
Good.
I like the idea of the guy who was the Obama translator, the bad Obama, mad Obama. And when Obama would say something very nice. Yeah.
Oh,
it's your job to shield the rest of the company from bad mixer.
My goal as a boom operator is to try to keep the mixer in his chair and offset as much as possible.
There's something you mentioned before about utilities want to go straight to mixer. I kind of disagree with that whole concept.
I didn't say I'm approving of it. I just said there are people that do that.
The way I was trained is you started as a utility, you did your 5 years or so. You maybe got the opportunity to do a smaller project, you boomed, you stepped up. You went back to utility for another couple of years. You kept honing your booming skills. And then you got the opportunity to be the number one, to be the boom guy, boom number one or whatever. And then you did that for I did that for about 15 years. And the first 5 years of booming in my own features, every year you get better and better. And then only after about 5 years, I consider myself a true boom operator, that I can walk on a set and feel comfortable. But the mixer, nowadays where they go from utility to mixer, I think that's so wrong because now the mixer has no idea what the boom operator can do when he watches the rehearsal, what his capabilities are, where he needs to be. And there's always that conflict because the boom operator thinks, well, you should have been there, I'm opening you up. But he doesn't realize what the boom operator can do. And I think it's important that everybody goes through the steps and puts their years in and then jump to the last level. That's the way I think.
Yeah.
I don't disagree, but I also think it's great when utilities decide, I want to be a utility. I think career utility, I don't think it should necessarily be viewed as a starting point. I think it's a very important role, integral to the team, because it's the boom op's very specific, the mixer's very specific, and the utility's very specific. So I love when I meet utilities who are like, I just think I want to be a utility. They're usually very good.
One thing that is true about that. Like in New York, they have one thing right about the rates. The utility and the boom op get the same money because they're two equally important jobs.
Yeah.
And the utility sometimes has an extra job. He has to then, besides wiring, jump in as a second boom at the last minute's notice, and he has to know what he's doing. So he has a lot more stress sometimes on him because he's doing multiple jobs at once.
Well,
and I think those two rates should be equal.
It's interesting that in the sound department, the best boy, who is the utility, is not the second. It's that the boom operator is technically the second, and then the utility is the third. That's why you sometimes hear utility is the third. But by no means is it a typical third, because if you look at a third grip, you can join 479 as a grip right now, and you'll be working tomorrow. And I'm not kidding about tomorrow. We could get you on set tomorrow. And they will say, okay, they'll call for one of these things, take it out to set, just listen for what they called for and observe. And they can do that. They can't do that with a utility in the sound department. They can't do that with a third in the sound department.
I think if we had more career utilities, I think we could push the rates up and really have a better, even playing field.
Yeah,
I just wanted to say, this is something I wanted to bring up, and this is the perfect time for it. For everybody to understand that the sound utility is no longer a cable person, which is sometimes the name. The job is so much more involved than pulling a wire through mud. And it is time for all of us collectively as a union to start barking a little bit about changing that and getting it along the lines of what Mike mentioned about New York and or LA. I don't
LA is
know
the
what
same.
it is,
Yeah.
but it's absolutely ridiculous that there are situations that I get in where a second, a utility could be easily used as a second boom op, but they refuse to even consider re-rating. And it shouldn't be on the moment, not even on the day, on the moment, that it should be an automatic. And we all need to really start talking about that, especially with this upcoming ASA negotiation, our invitation to participate. Everybody needs to send Mr. Akins an email and start this dialogue.
Well, another thing a mixer can do is they can say, oh, I don't actually have a utility, I have two boom ops.
Right.
And then the hierarchy on set will dictate that this is the person that does wiring and this is the person that does this. I've heard some mixers do that. They'll just say, oh, I have a team of me and two boom ops.
Yeah, we're doing that right now.
Yeah.
Joey, his credit's going to be second boom, but his responsibilities are slightly different. But
It's negotiating language. That's all it is between the powers that be and the mixer or boom op.
But it gets in their mind that it's producers see that like, well, that must be an important role.
Now, on the note of money, I'm gonna put this out to the panel. When you've had to negotiate your own rate, what are some tricks that you can use? Because obviously you're not the department head. You were not the person directly approached by the UPM or producer saying, I want you, or the director saying, I want you. You were part of a team. You lose a little bit of that simply by not being a department head directly approached by production. Mixer says, I want this person. So what are some tips and tricks you have for negotiating your own rate up as a boom op?
I won't say like getting the rate up. Sometimes just conditions. Sometimes like
conditions, yeah.
Like I travel a lot on shows, and I have a family, and I've been able to like get maybe a bigger apartment or a little larger room sometimes if you're going to be away from your family for 6 or 7 months. And sometimes when you have repeat customers, repeat directors or producers, they kind of, know the deal. I mean, getting overskill as a boom operator, it's $1 or $2 over maybe tops, right? I mean, or an equipment rental, a little kit rental. It's like even on the big shows, it's really hard to get nowadays.
Yeah,
and then
it's
they'll
capped.
still
The kit rental is capped even on the big shows. I mean, they don't.
Or they'll say, "Oh, we'll have to take it from the mixer." It's like good luck on that. It's like, I mean, I would rather get $1 extra than get a kit rental. It just makes it easier in the end for me.
Would that be based on the 695 contract?
all depends. It all depends. You know, it's like I
Yeah.
carry 2 cards, so it's, you know, what's scale here and scale over there. It's 40% difference, maybe 45% different.
Yeah.
But then you have to find that happy medium of like, well, what's the lowest you'll work for? You know, what's worth your time to, you know.
Yeah.
So there's not a lot of negotiating lately. But on the road, maybe it is, you know, and you guys like getting a car or something as a boom operator sometimes is unheard of. So, but
So like Kurt and Todd, when y'all transitioned from LA and you started to work in 479, you have a 479 card now as well.
Yeah.
So when you, so in 695, this is a rate, but also, as to Kevin's point, it is a lot higher than the 479 is rate. It's really crazy how sometimes producers still think that boom operators need to just get scale. That's what you do, is you pay scale. Well, yeah, maybe if it's 695 rates. You
But
don't
there's-
just pay a boom operator scale when that's $21.95. You don't do that. But that's happens to be the minimum on some of our low budget contracts here are very, very low like that. I mean, you would almost be like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me?
And there's some
so when you
very, very low
transition-
rates out of LA and very, very low. I heard of people working
mixers.
Yeah, I've heard of people going, I'm only making $9.50 an hour, but I've got my benefits. I just didn't see the guy's paycheck, but I'm like going, what? Pretty soon you're going to be paying this, like pay to play, like the old rock and roll days at the whiskey or whatever. I just know that there's a big difference between what whoever's getting paid scale and whoever's working on tier 0 or tier -6 or whatever they're going to come up with next.
you know, going back to contracts and stuff like that with negotiations coming up, and I've been, you know, a member of 477 for ever since it started. You know, if you take the rates across the board, say in crafts like, you know, what 479 covers, you know, like a grip and electric, say on a basic contract, like between California and say Georgia, it's maybe 15% difference. I've done the research on it in the past, but for sound, it's anywhere between 40 to 50% difference in rate in a basic contract. And it's like, try to get that playing field even. You know, it's like you have first, keys, seconds, and thirds. And it just, you know, on that contract, a boom operator's making the same as a dolly grip or you know, someone that actually doesn't have to work when the camera's rolling. You know, it's like the utility guy could be a boom operator, but he's making the same as a third grip. So, and that's something, you know, you guys are a powerhouse right here, 479 right now, and you guys may be able to make some changes with you know, getting those rates back up in a contract to starting at a higher point.
Just
So-
get ready. They're going to tell you that they're going to stop coming here because it's not cheap enough. You can't raise those rates because that's the only reason they're coming here is because the rates are cheap. But you're doing the same,
Seriously,
delivering the same product as somebody from California.
But
So
they're-
why
they're
should
not-
it be different, even though maybe the cost of living is lower? Are we an international union, or are we just, I don't know.
For some reason, they think the sound is the costliest part of the movie, which is a total fallacy. And, they're always looking ways to cut a third, send them home early or something, and it's just idiotic, the whole premise. So actually here it's actually better than Florida. In Florida you get, you know, number 1, number 2, number 3, and the guy could be, you know, a prop guy, it could be a grip, doesn't matter. Everybody gets those 3 levels. But at least here they brought the rates up a little bit above it, and people are trying to maintain that, and that's a good thing because everybody's trying to maintain. And your answer is just sometimes you have to say no, I'm not taking that job for that money, and go find somebody else. And unfortunately, there'll always be somebody else, but hopefully at one point, if everybody holds the line, the rates will start going up and be where they're supposed to be.
And that's something that Mike and I can speak experience of, because being in South Florida, there aren't a lot of crew members there. And even now, there's nobody. And, you know, the production has to see, well, crap, we have to bring someone in. You know, that's housing, per diem. You know, it could be an extra $10,000 a month for them because they have to bring someone in from California. So,
What were you
but
gonna
we've been
say,
able to
Freddie?
hold up the rates, you know, because we can say, well, you know, I'm not going to work for X amount of dollars. you know, you have to bring it to here. Otherwise, just bring someone in. Someone else will hire me. So.
Just remember, most of our contracts they're national contracts or area standards agreements. Definitely the different tiers and all. We have influence as 479 grows as a word, but we are not actually writing those contracts or making those rates specifically, unless it's a specific per movie contract at a certain low level. Once it hits a certain area, it becomes a national play. Just for information. If anybody wants more information on all that kind of stuff as far as the union is involved, I'd be happy to answer it, as my knowledge of that is too much in my head. I mean, a lot of you probably don't know, but I've been the president, the vice president, the secretary, the treasurer, the secretary treasurer of 479.
I'm very fortunate. I work all the time. I've never worked anywhere near this much in my entire career. Atlanta's been very good to me. I say no a lot, and it finally got me to the position just like 3 years ago where I just say, I have to have this. I have to have this rate mainly. The box rentals are really hard to get. They'll come back from corporate and say, oh no, we don't pay box rentals. That simple. So I learned that you kind of can't give them an option. If you say I would like, they're gonna come back and say no, we won't. But if you say I have to have, all of a sudden they go back to their people and they go, oh, well, you know, Matt Derber said he has to have $45 an hour. Okay, we'll offer him 44. Great. So what I do is I build a couple of extra dollars into that statement. You know, I have to have this. And they always come back and say, well, will you do it for this? And usually it's then a rate that I can work with. And that's worked really well now for the last 3 years. So my appeal to all of you guys is to come up with that number that works for you, and ask around, ask me, ask other people that are asking for rates, what they're getting. Without a doubt, they have to go up. You know, we are doing the same job that, you know, the big city guys are doing. And the utility guys, without a doubt, deserve a lot more. You know, the guy on our show is making like $10 an hour less than me. That's unacceptable. But what we did is we said, well, he has to be able to re-rate to my rate when he has put in this much time during the day. Like if he's booming for a couple of hours a day, he has to have this rate. And they said yes. And so in the beginning, the utility guy was making my rate every day. He abused the system, I believe. And so this year they came back and sat us down and go, okay, we can't have 2 boom operators at the boom operator rate every day, but we'll give you 3 days. Awesome. So now the utility guy on average is probably only making about $4 less than me. And those techniques have worked really well recently.
Actually, a Hollywood utility guy, like on a basic contract, makes more than a gaffer on a show. So that's a big stickler working with the gaffers. you know your utility guys. It's like, well, become a utility guy. He doesn't get the equipment rental you get.
That's when you can look at the gaffer and say, oh, you want to be a utility? Nope.
Yeah.
I sure don't.
Learn over under. Come on.
So that's where it starts.
Towards this discussion, this is the absolute time that we need to be very vocal and put some pressure on the system, because it'll be another 3 years before we can change anything. So we really all need to, I don't know, Facebook the hell out of it, write your congressman, you know, whatever. This is really the time.
Yeah, I agree.
I think there's one thing in the contract that's really missing too, is that they can actually, if they want to, do a 2-man sound department, because it's not written in there for a third. And that has to change, that paragraph, because every job, between the complexity of 10 actors talking, you can't do it with a 2-man crew anymore, because it's just the way they shoot things. You need a 3-man crew minimum. I actually think sometimes you should go to 4.
Yeah.
But that contract has to change, where it says a sound department consists of a mixer and a boom operator, and upon production approval, you can have a utility person or whatever, or second boom. That should be changed instantly.
So I don't know who we have to talk to about that, but that's a major thing in a contract. Every sound crew should be 3+.
Yeah, especially with the modern day craziness. It's really funny how camera's gone from just having a focus puller and a second. Now they have like 2 or 3 other types of
utilities.
Yeah, you have a couple of other positions that, including the waiter that is getting the rate of camera. You know, that person basically just
you
gives
mean
good
the
food for the
barista?
department.
The
Huh?
barista.
The barista?
Yeah, the barista basically. Yeah, who I do know a utility now, a second who actually brought a cappuccino maker when he was trying to establish himself in this market. Brought a cappuccino maker and stuck it on the truck. And of course they said, he's only here for like a week or 2. I want this guy to stay on with us the whole show. And so they hired him the rest of the show. Neat little.
That's part of their kit rental.
Yeah, part of their kit rental. Have a cappuccino maker and
come out
make
with,
the DP and operators happy.
I know this is a pretty open hypothetical question, but I'm from New York, and I remember in Atlanta, film was pretty strong in the 70s and 80s, went away, came back. I don't want to move back to New York. Do we see a long longevity here in Atlanta from this aspect of the industry? I mean, should I?
I think so. I mean, there's a lot of infrastructure here now. A lot of companies put a ton of money in.
Yeah, all the
to
brick
this.
and mortar.
There's no certainty, but I'd say at least the next 5 years. I mean, take 5 years at a time, go through cycles, but I don't think they're moving anywhere for the next 5 years.
Yeah, 'cause I've heard both so much.
Another $60 million studio is going in down in Fayette County.
So I should start.
You
with
don't
houses.
spend $60 million unless you think you're going to get it back.
Right.
There are people that know a lot more than we do about the future of filmmaking in Georgia, and to me, that says they know they're going to get their money back. Business is not
Is that
going
the studio in Tyrone that they're building, or is it?
Yeah.
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 And yeah, I was going to say the exact same thing. Think Pinewood.
Yeah.
The only Pinewood we have in America is here.
Yeah.
We also just had Blackwell recently open earlier this year. And there's now Third Rail that they're developing. There's a lot of studios. And that came from only about 6 or 7 years ago. The reason we did not get what I was told, and was the reason why we did not get Iron Man 3 is because of a lack of stage space. They looked at Screen Gems and they said, we need 10 stages, and they said, we don't have it.
Sure.
And so they went to the Carolinas. That was the reason that we did not get Iron Man 3. And so after that, you start seeing stage spaces pop up like crazy.
Sure.
And now Pinewood's growing, and everyone seems to be growing. So that seems to be something that they've acknowledged, and people have been remedying it. And like Max said, that's people with a lot more knowledge about the business.
About business and money and investing and all of that. I'm not going to put $60 million in you until I thoroughly check you out. I check out the market. You have to come up with so many numbers and reasons to back up this investment that you're going to make.
Good.
Someone's spending that money, so someone is in touch with government and the people that run this state.
Good.
And they're getting the you go ahead, pal. You'll be all right. We're going to keep that around. Another difference, and I don't know specifically, Lee Orloff told me that there's something about the incentive program here in Georgia that it is law, whereas other states, it's like an amendment or something like that. Here it's law. Therefore, they have to write a new law. A senator or whomever is going to have to come up with a new law and go through a lengthy process to get it eliminated.
That's actually part of what 479 has lobbied for, to get it written into Georgia law.
Awesome. Good, because I hate snow and I don't want to see New York again.
Okay, so any more questions? Because we have hit our time frame here. Any more questions for these gentlemen?
Excellent. Well,
Wow. Well, thank you very much for coming out. I really appreciate it. And
thanks to Alan. Thanks to Alan Williams for putting this all together.
Well, we covered everything earlier, it
Okay.
seemed like, but I will say this: hygiene is important. You got to be crammed into the corner with your 2 dolly grips, your 2 focus pullers, your operators, and God knows who else they stick back there with you. And I talk to people, and they're just like, and I'm like, oh, I come with gum. I show up with things for people. I bring La Croix in and stuff, and gum is like a thing that I hand out to a lot of people, and I make sure that my breath is at least somewhat, not going to knock anybody out, and that's important. Also, since I do this a lot, my underarms are, fortunately, most of the utilities, was it bad?
People don't normally go towards you if it's bad. Just saying.
Yeah, you
Why do you
gotta,
think I'm leaning back?
you gotta smell nice.
I use
I think
Old
it's
Spice
important.
swagger. I've gotten lots of compliments.
But the number one thing that I've discovered, Gas X, baby.
Oh
Gas
yeah,
X.
oh yeah. You gotta walk away when you
Beano.
when you have to do anything. You've got don't subject your corner
Yeah,
roommates
well,
to
you
that.
can't always walk away, you know. But anyway, Gas X.
You can
How else do you get your operating space?
Yeah, exactly. Clear it out, boys.
We are handing around evaluations. You're hopefully familiar with this process. Fill it out. Tell us what you thought.
We don't get one?
The local does look at it, and they figure things out for future classes. Thanks for coming out, everybody.